The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie twilight over the Hidden Leaf Village. 12-year-old Naruto Uzumaki was trudging through the streets, his eyes low and his heart heavy. The whispers of the villagers echoed in his ears like a haunting melody he couldn't escape. "That's the kid, right? The fox demon. Stay away from him. He's nothing but trouble." Naruto clenched his fists, trying to push away the anger boiling inside him. He'd heard it all before, but today felt different. Loneliness was a constant companion. But after failing the genin exams for the third time, the sense of inadequacy was suffocating. His dreams of becoming Hokage felt more distant than ever. As Naruto made his way to his small apartment, a group of villagers appeared in the alleyway ahead, their faces twisted with hatred. They were armed with makeshift weapons, sticks, rocks, even a few kunai. "There he is," one of the villagers snarled. "It's his fault the Nine Tails attacked our village. We'll make him pay." Naruto's eyes widened, fear flashing across his face as he turned to run. But they were too fast. Before he could react, a rock struck him in the back, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Stop! I didn't do anything," Naruto yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. But the villagers showed no mercy. They surrounded him, kicking and striking him with their weapons. Pain shot through Naruto's body, but the emotional wound cut deeper. Why? Why did they hate him so much? Just as a particularly sharp blow hit his ribs, something inside Naruto snapped. His eyes glowed a fierce, intense blue as a sudden rush of energy surged through his body. He felt different, stronger. Something ancient and powerful stirred within him. And with it, a vision. Naruto found himself standing in a vast field, surrounded by towering cherry blossom trees. In the center of the field was a grand temple, its doors wide open. Inside, sitting upon a throne, was a man with wild black hair, a confident smirk, and two gleaming swords strapped to his waist. The man's presence was overwhelming, radiating power and authority. "I've been waiting for you," the man said, his voice deep and commanding. "Who are you?" Naruto stammered, his heart racing. "I am Kozuki Oden, a warrior from a distant world. My power is now yours." Before Naruto could respond, Oden stood and drew his two swords, Enma and Aim no Habakiri. With a single, fluid motion, he swung them. And the air itself seemed to crackle with energy. The power was immense, but Naruto felt it resonate deep within him, as if this strength had always been there, lying dormant. "I fought for my people, for what I believed in," Oden said, his voice filled with pride. "But you must fight for something more. You will inherit not just my strength, but my will." Naruto felt his body tingling with power. The vision began to fade, but Oden's words echoed in his mind, leaving behind a sense of purpose that had never existed before. Suddenly, Naruto was back in the alley, surrounded by the mob of villagers. But something had changed. His eyes still glowed, and his body felt lighter, more powerful. Instinctively, his hands reached out, and in a burst of chakra, two swords materialized in his grip, one dark and foreboding, the other radiant and pure. The villagers recoiled, shocked by the transformation. What is that?" one of them muttered, fear creeping into his voice. Naruto stood, his posture different now, calm, confident. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but the power coursing through him was undeniable. Without thinking, he swung the swords in a wide arc, and the air around him shimmered as if cut by an invisible force. The ground beneath the villagers trembled, and a gust of wind sent them sprawling. The sight of the power Naruto wielded terrified the mob, and they quickly scattered, abandoning their weapons as they fled. Naruto, panting heavily, stared at the glowing blades in his hands. He knew these weren't ordinary swords. They felt alive, pulsing with energy, connected to him in ways he couldn't explain. As the adrenaline faded, the swords vanished, dissolving into particles of light. Naruto fell to his knees, exhaustion washing over him. His mind raced, replaying the vision of Kozuki Oden and the sudden burst of power. What was that?" Naruto whispered to himself. Before he could think any further, a familiar voice called out to him. Naruto, Iruka-sensei rushed into the alley, his face pale with concern. Are you okay? I heard there was a commotion. His words trailed off as he saw the destruction around them, the cracked ground, the broken weapons, and Naruto kneeling in the center of it all. I am fine, Iruka-sensei, Naruto muttered, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. Iruka's eyes softened with worry, but he didn't push the matter. Come on. Let's get you home. Naruto nodded, allowing Iruka to help him up. As they walked in silence, Naruto's mind continued to churn. That power. Oden's power. It wasn't just a dream. Something inside him had awakened, and with it came a flood of questions. That night, as Naruto lay in his bed, staring up at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't yet understand. The swords, the vision, Oden's words, it was all connected. But how? And why? The next morning, Naruto woke up early, his body still sore from the previous day's beating. But the memory of Oden's power lingered, filling him with a strange sense of determination. He couldn't ignore it. He had to understand what had happened. Naruto spent the day training, pushing himself harder than ever before. At first, he tried to summon the swords again, but nothing happened. Frustration bubbled inside him, but he refused to give up. He could feel the power still there, just out of reach. Hours passed, and as the sun began to set, Naruto collapsed onto the training field, panting heavily. He felt drained, but there was a fire in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The memory of the villagers attacking him played over in his mind, but this time, there was no fear. He had the power to fight back now, to protect himself. Just as Naruto was about to call it a day, something shifted inside him. His vision blurred for a moment, and then, in a flash of light, the swords appeared in his hands again. Enma and Aim no Habakiri. Naruto stared at them, his heart pounding in his chest. The weight of the swords felt right, natural, as if they were extensions of his own body. He gripped the hilts tightly, feeling the raw power that surged through them. This is Oden's power, Naruto whispered, a grin slowly spreading across his face. I can feel it. He swung the swords, and this time, the air around him rippled with energy. It wasn't just chakra, it was something more, something primal and unstoppable. The power of a legendary samurai, passed down to him. Naruto laughed, exhilaration bubbling up inside him. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel weak or worthless. He felt powerful, capable of anything. The doubts that had plagued him for so long melted away, replaced by a burning resolve. I'm going to become the strongest ninja ever, Naruto declared, his voice firm with conviction. And I'll prove to everyone that I'm more than just the Nine Tails. As Naruto continued to practice with his newfound strength, a figure watched from the shadows, a calculating look in his eyes. It was none other than Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. He had witnessed the awakening of Naruto's power, and though he didn't yet understand its origins, one thing was clear: Naruto Uzumaki was no ordinary child. As the days passed, Naruto began to unlock more of Oden's abilities. His strength increased, and his skill with the swords improved with each passing day. But with power came new challenges, and Naruto would soon learn that wielding the power of a legendary samurai was no easy task. For now, though, Naruto was content. He had found a new path, one that would lead him to greatness. And with Kozuki Oden's power at his side, Naruto knew that nothing could stand in his way. Naruto stood in the middle of the training field, the sun high overhead, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. His hands gripped the hilts of Enma and Aim no Habakiri, the legendary swords that once belonged to Kozuki Oden, now somehow his to wield. As the light reflected off the blades, Naruto couldn't help but marvel at the raw power coursing through his veins. He swung the swords, unleashing a powerful slash that sent a shockwave through the air. The trees in front of him groaned, the pressure from his swing causing their branches to snap off like twigs. Naruto's eyes widened in amazement. He hadn't even infused the swords with chakra, yet their destructive capability was already far beyond anything he had ever imagined. Wow. These things are insane, he muttered to himself. But the more he tested Oden's power, the more questions flooded his mind. Why him? How had Oden's abilities come to be inside him? And what did it mean for his life as a shinobi? Naruto shook his head, trying to focus on the moment. If he wanted to get stronger, if he wanted to prove himself to the village and achieve his dream of becoming Hokage, he needed to master these abilities. As he prepared to swing the swords again, the memory of Iruka's worried face flashed in his mind. It had only been a few days since the incident with the villagers, but Naruto hadn't told anyone about the power he had gained. He wasn't even sure how to explain it. I should probably talk to someone about this, Naruto muttered under his breath. But the thought of going to the Hokage's office or talking to Kakashi-sensei made his stomach twist with nerves. What if they didn't understand? What if they thought he was dangerous? Naruto shook his head again. No, he had to figure this out on his own. At least for now. Later that evening, Naruto found himself sitting by the Hokage monument, gazing down at the village below. The familiar feeling of loneliness crept over him. But this time, it was different. He wasn't the same weak, isolated boy he had been just a few days ago. He was stronger now, much stronger. But with that strength came new challenges. Oden's power was vast, and Naruto could feel that he had barely scratched the surface of it. Mastering the swords and the energy within them was only the beginning. If he wanted to control this power fully, he would need to push himself even further. As he sat there, lost in thought, a familiar voice broke through the silence. Hey, Naruto. Naruto turned to see Sasuke Uchiha approaching, his hands in his pockets and a smirk on his face. I heard you've been training non-stop lately. What's with you? Did you finally realize how far behind you are? Naruto's eyes narrowed. Shut up, Sasuke. You don't know what you're talking about. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Oh? So you think you've gotten stronger? Naruto stood up, a grin spreading across his face. Stronger? You have no idea. Sasuke. I'm not the same guy the first was last week. Is that so? Sasuke's smirk widened as he stepped forward, his Sharingan flickering to life. Then prove it. Naruto's heart raced with excitement. He had been itching for a fight. And Sasuke was the perfect opponent to test his new powers against. He took a deep breath, summoning the swords from within. Enma and Aim no Habakiri materialized in his hands, the blades glowing faintly with energy. Sasuke's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but his expression quickly hardened. Where did you get those? Naruto didn't answer. Instead, he charged forward, swinging both swords in a wide arc. Sasuke barely had time to dodge as the force of the attack sent a gust of wind rippling through the clearing. He flipped backward, landing gracefully a few meters away. Not bad, Sasuke said, his voice calm but his eyes sharp. But you'll need more than flashy moves to beat me. Naruto grinned, his grip tightening on the swords. Oh, I've got more. Believe me. He swung again, this time channeling his chakra into the blades. The ground beneath them cracked as the energy surged outward, creating a shockwave that sent debris flying in all directions. Sasuke leapt into the air, dodging the attack. But Naruto was already moving, his body quicker than before. He appeared behind Sasuke in an instant, his swords aimed for a strike. Sasuke's Sharingan flared, and he spun around, blocking the strike with a kunai. The force of the clash sent sparks flying. But Naruto didn't back down. He pressed forward, swinging the swords in a flurry of strikes. Sasuke gritted his teeth, parrying each blow. But it was clear that Naruto's strength had grown exponentially. Where did you get this power? Sasuke demanded, his voice strained as he blocked another attack. Naruto's grin widened. I told you, Sasuke. I'm not the same guy anymore. With a powerful slash, Naruto broke through Sasuke's guard, sending him skidding backward. Sasuke quickly regained his footing, his eyes narrowing in frustration. This is insane, Sasuke muttered under his breath, his Sharingan spinning faster. He had always been ahead of Naruto. But this was something else entirely. Naruto's power was different, almost unnatural. He couldn't afford to underestimate him. All right, Naruto, Sasuke said, his voice low and dangerous. If that's how you want to play, then I won't hold back. Without warning, Sasuke activated his Chidori, the crackling lightning filling the air with an intense hum. He dashed forward. The lightning blade aimed directly at Naruto's chest. Naruto's eyes widened. But he didn't flinch. Instead, he channeled his chakra into Enma, infusing the blade with the same energy that Oden had once wielded. The air around him seemed to warp as the power surged through him. As Sasuke's Chidori came closer, Naruto swung Enma with all his might. The two attacks collided in a blinding flash of light, the shockwave shaking the ground beneath them. Sasuke was sent flying backward, crashing into a nearby tree. Naruto stood there, panting heavily, the sword still glowing in his hands. The power of Oden had saved him from Sasuke's deadly attack, but he could feel the toll it had taken on his body. He wasn't used to wielding such immense power yet. Sasuke groaned as he pulled himself to his feet, his eyes burning with determination. "What the hell are you, Naruto?" Naruto's expression softened for a moment, and he glanced down at the swords in his hands. "I don't know, Sasuke. But whatever this power is, I'm going to master it." The clash between Naruto and Sasuke didn't go unnoticed. Watching from a distance was Kakashi Hitaki, his lone Sharingan eye focused on the intense battle. He had sensed something strange about Naruto's chakra earlier in the week. But this was beyond anything he had expected. "That's not normal chakra," Kakashi muttered to himself, his brow furrowed in concern. "Those swords, and the way Naruto is fighting, it's like he's a completely different person." As Kakashi continued to observe, a figure stepped up beside him, Jiraiya. "The Toad Sage." "Kakashi," Jiraiya said, his voice serious. "I've been keeping an eye on Naruto too. Something's happened to him." Kakashi glanced at Jiraiya, his expression grim. "You think it has to do with the Nine Tails?" Jiraiya shook his head. "Nope. This isn't the Nine Tails chakra. It's something else. Something older." Kakashi's eyes narrowed. "What do we do?" Jiraiya sighed, crossing his arms. "For now, we watch. But sooner or later, Naruto's going to need guidance. He's walking a dangerous path. And if he doesn't learn to control that power, it could consume him." Kakashi nodded, his gaze returning to the battlefield where Naruto and Sasuke continued to clash. "Let's hope he's ready for what comes next." As the dust settled on the battlefield, Naruto stood victorious, but not without his share of exhaustion. Sasuke lay on the ground, panting heavily, his body bruised and battered from the fight. Despite the fierce battle, there was no animosity in Sasuke's eyes, only curiosity and frustration. Naruto sheathed the swords, his breathing labored but his spirit unbroken. He had proven something today, both to Sasuke and to himself. But the weight of Oden's power still lingered, a constant reminder of the responsibility that came with such strength. As Naruto walked away from the battlefield, his thoughts drifted back to Kozuki Oden, the legendary warrior who had bestowed this power upon him. What was Oden's will? And how could Naruto use this power to fulfill his own dream of becoming Hokage? The journey ahead would be long. But Naruto knew one thing for certain. With Oden's power, nothing could stand in his way. Naruto trudged through the streets of Konoha, his body still aching from the intense battle with Sasuke. His mind, however, was far from the physical pain. The weight of the new power, the legendary strength of Kozuki Oden, was heavy on his shoulders. He had only just begun to understand it, but already, it had drastically changed the way he fought. He glanced down at his hands, feeling the familiar weight of Enma and Aim no Habakiri resting inside him, as if they were extensions of his own soul. The power felt exhilarating, like nothing he'd ever experienced, but it was also terrifying. How had he, of all people, been chosen to wield the strength of a man from another world? Another time? What if I can't control it? The memory of Sasuke's wide-eyed look as Naruto blocked his Chidori flashed through his mind. He hadn't meant to go that far, but in the heat of battle, something primal had surged up from deep within him, compelling him to use Oden's immense power. And he had barely scratched the surface. He needed answers. The next day, Naruto sat on the balcony of his apartment, staring up at the blue sky. His body had mostly recovered, but his mind was restless. He knew he had to talk to someone. Keeping this power a secret wasn't an option. especially after what had happened with Sasuke. But who could he trust? The answer came in the form of a familiar, perverted laugh from below his balcony. Naruto peeked over the railing to see Jiraiya walking through the village, ogling every woman that passed by. Arrow Sennin. Naruto shouted, leaping down to the street. Jiraiya stopped, turning with a grin, though it faltered when he saw the serious look on Naruto's face. "Hey, kid," Jiraiya greeted, scratching the back of his head. "You look like you've got something on your mind. What's up?" Naruto hesitated for a moment, unsure how to even begin explaining. But if anyone could help him understand this power, it would be Jiraiya. After all, Jiraiya had taught him how to control the Nine Tails chakra. This should be no different. "Right? I need to talk to you," Naruto said, his voice low. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. "All right. Let's find somewhere more private." They found themselves in one of Jiraiya's usual training spots, a secluded area outside the village, where the trees provided ample cover from prying eyes. Naruto paced back and forth, trying to find the right words as Jiraiya leaned against a tree, watching him with curiosity. "Okay, kid. Spill it. What's going on?" Jiraiya asked. Naruto stopped pacing and took a deep breath. "Something happened to me during that fight with the villagers a few days ago." Jiraiya's expression grew more serious. "Go on." I don't know how to explain it, but I think I've gained a new power. It's not like the Nine Tails chakra or anything I've ever felt before. It's like there's someone else inside me. Someone really strong." Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean by someone else?" Naruto clenched his fists. "It's like this guy, Kozuki Oden, gave me his strength. I can summon these swords. And they're crazy strong. It's like I'm using his power, not mine." Naruto held out his hand, and with a flicker of chakra, Enma and Aim no Habakiri materialized in his grasp. Jiraiya's eyes widened in shock at the sight of the glowing blades. "Those aren't normal swords," Jiraiya muttered, stepping closer to examine them. "Where did you get them?" Naruto shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. They just appeared when I was in trouble. And ever since then, I've had this power. I can feel it inside me, like it's waiting for me to unlock more of it." Jiraiya circled around Naruto, his eyes focused on the swords. "I've never seen anything like this before. This Kozuki Oden you mentioned, do you know who he is?" Naruto shook his head. "Not really. But it's like I can feel his spirit guiding me. I keep having these flashes, memories that aren't mine. He was strong, really strong, and fearless." Jiraiya crossed his arms, deep in thought. "This is serious, Naruto. If what you're saying is true, and you've somehow inherited the power of a warrior from another time, this could be dangerous. There's no telling how far this power goes or what kind of toll it might take on you." Naruto's face hardened with determination. "I'm not afraid of it, Arrow Sennin. I just want to understand it. I want to learn how to control it." Jiraiya sighed. "Well, if you're serious about mastering this power, then we're going to have to approach this carefully. You've already got the Nine Tails chakra to worry about, and adding this on top of that makes things even more complicated." Naruto nodded. "I'm ready." Jiraiya smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "All right, kid. First things first. We need to figure out the source of this power. If these swords are connected to this Kozuki Oden guy, then we need to learn more about him. Maybe there's a way to tap into his memories or his techniques." Naruto's heart raced with excitement. The thought of learning more about Oden, of mastering the power that now resided within him, filled him with determination. "So, where do we start?" Naruto asked, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Jiraiya rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "There's a place not too far from here, a hidden temple that dates back centuries. It's said to hold ancient knowledge about warriors from other lands. If anyone knew about a man like Oden, it would be them." Naruto's eyes widened. "A temple? That sounds awesome." Jiraiya chuckled. "Yeah, don't get too excited. It's not exactly a walk in the park. But if you're serious about this, we'll head there first thing tomorrow." Naruto grinned. "I'm ready." The next morning, Naruto and Jiraiya set out for the temple. The journey was long, taking them through dense forests and rocky terrain. But Naruto's energy was boundless. He couldn't wait to uncover the secrets of Oden's power and figure out why it had been given to him. As they approached the temple, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, and he kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting an enemy to jump out from the trees. "Relax, kid," Jiraiya said, noticing Naruto's tension. "We're almost there." Naruto nodded, though the unease didn't leave him. When they finally reached the temple, it was exactly as Jiraiya had described, a crumbling structure hidden deep within the mountains, its stone walls covered in moss and vines. The entrance was guarded by two large statues of armored warriors, their stone faces weathered by time. Jiraiya led the way inside, and Naruto followed, his heart pounding with anticipation. Inside the temple, the air was cool and still, the only sound being their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. The main chamber was vast, with ancient murals depicting battles and warriors from long-forgotten eras. At the center of the room stood a large altar, its surface covered in dust. "This place is creepy," Naruto muttered, glancing around at the eerie murals. Jiraiya smirked. "Yeah, but it's also full of knowledge. Look at these murals. They're depicting warriors from different lands. Just like Oden." Naruto's eyes widened as he looked closer at one of the murals. The figure in the painting was holding two swords, much like Oden. His heart raced as he realized he might be standing in a place where Oden's history could be unlocked. "This is it. Arrow Sennin," Naruto whispered. "This is where we'll find the answers." Jiraiya nodded, stepping up to the altar. "Let's see what this place has to offer. We're about to dive into a whole new world of power." "Naruto. Just be careful. It could be more than we bargained for." Naruto gripped the hilts of Enma and aimed no Habakiri, determination burning in his eyes. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it. The power of Kozuki Oden had chosen him for a reason, and now it was up to him to uncover that reason, and to become the strongest shinobi the world had ever seen. Naruto stood before the altar, his heart thumping with anticipation. Jiraiya, though calm on the outside, shared his apprentice's apprehension. This temple held secrets, ancient ones, that even Jiraiya hadn't expected to stumble upon. But here they were, on the brink of discovering the truth behind Naruto's newfound power. The dim light of the temple flickered as Naruto reached out, placing his hand on the dusty stone altar. A wave of energy rippled through the chamber, causing the air to hum with an eerie resonance. The murals on the walls seemed to come alive, their figures shifting and moving as if telling a story that had long been forgotten. "What the?" Naruto muttered, stepping back as the air thickened with an overwhelming presence. Jiraiya's expression darkened as he moved closer, eyes narrowing at the shifting murals. "This isn't just any place, Naruto. The temple's reacting to your power, or rather, to Oden's power." Naruto's grip tightened on his swords, instinctively pulling Enma and Aim no Habakiri from their sheaths. "Why do I feel like something big is about to happen?" Before Jiraiya could respond, the altar glowed with an intense light, forcing both shinobi to shield their eyes. The entire room vibrated with the force of the energy, and then, in the center of the altar, a projection began to take form. At first, it was indistinct, flickering and wavering like a flame in the wind. But as the light coalesced, the figure of a man emerged. He was tall, muscular, with long, flowing hair tied back, and a fierce presence that radiated power. Two swords rested at his side, their gleaming edges reminiscent of the very weapons Naruto now wielded. Naruto's eyes widened. "Is that?" Jiraiya's voice was grave. "It's Kozuki Oden." The spectral figure of Oden stood tall, his eyes sweeping over the room as if assessing the situation. His gaze eventually settled on Naruto, who stood frozen, caught between awe and confusion. "Who are you?" Oden's voice echoed through the chamber, deep and commanding. "And why do you wield my blades?" Naruto swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet the gaze of the legendary samurai. I don't know why. These swords, your power, they came to me when I was in trouble. I didn't ask for it. But now I have it. And I need to understand it." Oden's expression remained unreadable as he studied Naruto. After a long moment, he spoke again, his tone softer but still firm. "It seems that fate has chosen you, young shinobi." My power, my legacy, has found its way to you. But with it comes a great responsibility. Naruto's chest tightened. Why me? I'm just a ninja trying to get stronger, trying to protect my village. I don't even know who you are. Oden let out a low, rumbling laugh. You may not know me, but the swords you wield do. Enma and Aim no Habakiri are more than just weapons, they are extensions of my soul, forged to protect what is precious and fight for what is right. If they have chosen you, then you must prove yourself worthy of carrying them. Jiraiya stepped forward cautiously. Oden-sama, we didn't come here looking for a fight. Naruto needs to learn about this power, about how to control it. He's not just any ninja. He carries the burden of the 9 tails. And now your strength too. It's a lot for one person to handle. Oden's gaze flickered toward Jiraiya, nodding in acknowledgement before turning back to Naruto. You carry a great weight, young one. But it is not the burden that defines a warrior. It is how you carry it. Naruto took a deep breath, the words sinking in. He had never considered the weight of his burdens in this way. I want to carry it. I want to get stronger, for my friends. For my village. But I don't know how. Oden's eyes softened, and he stepped closer to Naruto, his towering figure no longer intimidating but rather imposing with a sense of purpose. The power you seek is not just strength of the body. It is strength of the heart. To wield my blades, you must learn to balance both. These swords demand respect, discipline, and conviction. Without them, they will destroy you. Naruto nodded slowly, absorbing every word. I'm ready to learn. Teach me how to use them. Oden's figure began to flicker again, the energy in the room shifting as his spectral form began to fade. But his voice remained steady, resonating in Naruto's mind. The path you walk is long and difficult, but I will guide you. My power is now yours. But remember, power alone does not make one great. The heart of a warrior is what truly matters. With those final words, Oden's form vanished, leaving Naruto standing in the now silent chamber. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. Jiraiya let out a long breath, breaking the silence. Well, kid, looks like you've got your work cut out for you. Naruto sheathed his swords, his heart still racing. I can do it. I know I can. Oden chose me for a reason, right? Jiraiya smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. You've always had that fire in you, Naruto. But now you're playing in a whole new league. Oden's power is immense, and you're right to want to learn how to control it. But don't lose sight of who you are in the process. Naruto glanced at Jiraiya, confusion flickering across his face. What do you mean? Jiraiya's smile faded as he spoke. Power can change people. You've seen it yourself with the 9 tails. Don't let Oden's strength make you forget why you fight, to protect those you care about. Naruto nodded, the gravity of Jiraiya's words sinking in. He knew the dangers of power all too well, having struggled with the 9 tails for as long as he could remember. But this was different. Oden's power felt pure, untainted by hatred or malice. It felt like something he could trust, something that could help him protect everyone. I won't forget, Naruto said firmly. I'll make sure this power is used for good. Jiraiya clapped a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Good. Now let's get back to the village. We've got a lot of training to do. Back in Konoha, Naruto felt a renewed sense of purpose. The conversation with Oden had left him more determined than ever to master the power within him. Over the next few weeks, Naruto and Jiraiya trained relentlessly, honing Naruto's ability to wield Enma and Aim no Habakiri with precision and discipline. The swords responded to his will, their movements becoming an extension of Naruto's own body. As he grew more comfortable with them, he began to understand the weight of Oden's legacy, the duty to protect, to fight with honor, and to never waver in the face of adversity. But mastering Oden's power wasn't just about physical strength. Naruto found himself reflecting more on his own values, on the lessons Jiraiya and Oden had imparted to him. He realized that the true strength of a warrior didn't come from their power, but from their heart. One afternoon, as Naruto trained in a secluded field outside the village, he paused, looking down at his hands. His grip on Enma was firm, steady. He could feel the power surging through the blade, but it wasn't overwhelming anymore. It felt right. A soft breeze rustled through the trees, and Naruto smiled, his heart light for the first time in a long while. "I'll make you proud, Oden," Naruto whispered, his eyes gleaming with determination. "I'll make sure your power is used to protect everyone I love." As he stood there, his swords in hand, Naruto knew that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. But he was ready. He had the strength of Kozuki Oden. And now, it was time to make that strength his own. Naruto trained tirelessly over the next few weeks, mastering the art of using Enma and Aim no Habakiri with more fluidity and precision each day. Jiraiya watched with a mixture of pride and concern, knowing full well the toll such immense power could take on a young shinobi. As Naruto grew more skilled with Oden's swords, the pressure to balance his new strength with his own identity weighed heavily on his mind. The days passed, and with each sunrise, Naruto became more accustomed to the power coursing through him. Yet, despite his growing control over Oden's abilities, he couldn't shake the lingering unease in his heart. A part of him feared what this power could mean, not just for him, but for those around him. One afternoon, Naruto found himself standing in front of the Hokage monument, gazing up at the stone faces of the previous Hokage. His chest tightened as he stared at the fourth Hokage's face, the face of his father. Though he now knew the truth about his lineage, the burden of his father's legacy felt heavier than ever. "Am I really worthy of all this power?" Naruto muttered under his breath, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the hilt of Enma. The weight of both his father's legacy and Oden's strength was daunting. He had always dreamed of becoming Hokage. But now, that dream seemed both within reach and impossibly distant at the same time. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through his thoughts. "Naruto." Turning around, Naruto saw Hinata approaching, her gentle smile lighting up the path as she jogged toward him. She seemed a little nervous, as she often did when talking to him, but her presence always brought him a sense of calm. "Hey, Hinata," Naruto greeted with a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Hinata noticed the tension in his face and tilted her head. "Are you all right? You seem troubled." Naruto sighed, looking back up at the monument. "I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot about this new power I've got. It's not like anything I've ever felt before. And it's kind of scary." Hinata frowned slightly, her soft gaze never leaving his face. "You've always been strong, Naruto. No matter what power you have, I know you'll use it to protect everyone. Just like you always do." Naruto chuckled, though his voice was strained. "Yeah. But this is different. Oden's power, it's like nothing I've ever experienced. It's overwhelming." Hinata stepped closer, her eyes filled with understanding. "I believe in you. You've always carried such a heavy burden, but you've never let it stop you from doing what's right. This power is just another part of you now, and I know you'll learn to control it." Her words were gentle, but they hit Naruto deeply. He looked at her, truly seeing the trust and admiration in her eyes. For a moment, the weight of his fears lifted, and he found comfort in the simplicity of Hinata's faith in him. "Thanks, Hinata," Naruto said softly, his smile finally genuine. "That means a lot." Hinata blushed, nodding shyly. "I'm always here for you, Naruto." As evening fell, Naruto returned to his apartment, feeling more at ease than he had in days. Hinata's words had given him clarity, but there was still so much he needed to figure out. The mystery of Oden's power and why it had come to him lingered in his thoughts, like a puzzle he couldn't yet solve. Just as he was about to settle in for the night, a knock came at the door. Naruto opened it to find Kakashi standing outside, his usual unreadable expression in place. "Kakashi-sensei, what are you doing here?" Naruto asked, surprised by the visit. Kakashi stepped inside, glancing around the small apartment before turning to Naruto. "I heard from Jiraiya about your new abilities. I thought it might be time for us to talk." Naruto frowned, closing the door behind him. "Talk about what?" Kakashi's eyes softened slightly. "About power, Naruto. I've seen what happens when a shinobi gains immense strength too quickly. You're not the first one to experience something like this, and I don't want you to face the same dangers others have." Naruto's fists clenched at his sides. "I'm not going to let this power control me. I'm going to use it to protect the village, just like I always have." Kakashi raised a hand in a calming gesture. "I'm not saying you can't, Naruto. I believe in you. But power isn't just about strength. It's about responsibility. I'm here to make sure you're prepared for that. Naruto stared at his former sensei. A swirl of emotions churning in his chest. Kakashi had always been a mentor to him, guiding him through some of his toughest challenges. But this felt different. It wasn't just about ninja techniques or battle strategies anymore. This was about something deeper, something that went beyond what he had ever faced. After a long silence, Naruto finally spoke. I don't know if I'm ready for this. Kakashi-sensei. It's like I'm carrying too much all at once. Kakashi smiled beneath his mask, his eye crinkling with warmth. You've been carrying heavy burdens for a long time, Naruto. And you've always found a way to bear them. This is no different. Naruto's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to believe that. He wanted to believe that he could handle anything that came his way, just like he always had. But the stakes felt higher now. The pressure more intense than ever before. Come with me tomorrow, Kakashi said, breaking Naruto's thoughts. We'll spar. I want to see how you've grown with this new power. And maybe we'll figure out what kind of shinobi you're becoming. Naruto hesitated, but then nodded. All right. I'll be ready. The next morning, Naruto found himself standing in a training field, facing Kakashi. The air was crisp, and the early sunlight cast long shadows across the grass. Kakashi stood calmly, his hand resting on his kunai pouch. But Naruto knew better than to underestimate him. Kakashi's strength and experience were on a whole different level. Naruto unsheathed Enma and aimed no Habakiri, feeling their familiar weight in his hands. He took a deep breath, centering himself as Oden's power coursed through him. Let's see what you've got, Naruto, Kakashi called out, his tone light but serious. Without hesitation, Naruto charged forward, his movements swift and precise. Enma and aim no Habakiri sliced through the air with a grace that was both natural and otherworldly. The power of Kozuki Oden flowing through him as though they had fought together for years. Kakashi dodged effortlessly, his Sharingan eye tracking every movement. You've definitely gotten faster, he commented, sidestepping another strike. But speed isn't everything. Naruto smirked, flipping backward to avoid a counterattack. I know that, sensei. I've got a lot more up my sleeve. He gathered chakra into his feet, launching himself at Kakashi with even greater speed. Enma came down in a powerful arc, but Kakashi blocked it with a kunai, the force of the clash sending a shockwave through the air. Naruto followed up with a sweep from aim no Habakiri, aiming for Kakashi's side. But the seasoned shinobi twisted just in time to avoid the blade. The spar continued, Naruto pushing harder and harder, testing the limits of his new power. But Kakashi remained calm, matching him blow for blow. Despite his newfound strength, Naruto couldn't help but feel like Kakashi was holding back. As they clashed again, Kakashi's voice cut through the battle. Naruto, you've got the power, but you're still thinking like a ninja. Naruto gritted his teeth. What's that supposed to mean? Kakashi stepped back, lowering his kunai. Oden wasn't a ninja. He was a samurai. His strength wasn't just about overwhelming his opponents. It was about conviction. Fighting with purpose. Naruto froze, Oden's words echoing in his mind. The heart of a warrior is what truly matters. Kakashi continued, his voice soft but firm. If you're going to wield Oden's power, you need to embrace more than just the physical strength. You need to understand the spirit behind it. Naruto's grip tightened on his swords, his heart pounding with realization. He had been so focused on mastering the technical aspects of Oden's abilities, but he hadn't truly embraced the philosophy behind them. Oden wasn't just strong, he fought with purpose, with heart. And Naruto knew, deep down, that this was the missing piece. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath as he centered himself. When he opened them again, his gaze was steady, filled with newfound clarity. I get it now, Naruto said quietly. It's not just about the power. It's about the heart. Kakashi smiled beneath his mask. Exactly. Naruto sheathed his swords, a new sense of determination swelling within him. He wasn't just going to wield Oden's power. He was going to honor it. He was going to become the kind of warrior who fought not just with strength, but with heart. And with that, Naruto knew he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Naruto stood still in the training field, the soft wind brushing against his face as he absorbed the lesson Kakashi had just imparted. The notion of fighting with purpose resonated deeply within him. He knew now that his journey with Kozuki Oden's power wasn't just about harnessing raw strength. It was about understanding the spirit that came with it. Kakashi watched Naruto closely, noticing the shift in his demeanor. The boy who once fought impulsively, relying on sheer determination and luck, was slowly maturing into someone who fought with intention. "Let's try again," Naruto said, his voice calmer, more focused. Kakashi gave a nod, resuming his stance. This time, as Naruto unsheathed Enma and aimed no Habakiri. His mind was clear. He wasn't thinking about overpowering Kakashi or impressing anyone. He was thinking about protecting his friends, about living up to the legacy of his father, and most of all, about becoming the man who could stand as both a ninja and a warrior. The swords in his hands hummed with a different kind of energy, a reflection of his resolve. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the steady pulse of his chakra align with the power of the swords. When he opened them, his expression was serene, focused. He moved forward, but this time, there was no wild charge. Instead, his steps were deliberate, controlled, and fluid. His strikes came in a series of precise, calculated movements, each one designed not just to land a blow, but to convey purpose. Kakashi noticed the shift immediately. Naruto's swordsmanship had transformed. Enma came down in a wide arc, but it wasn't just brute force driving it. It was measured, aimed at creating an opening in Kakashi's defenses. The Jonin blocked it, but Naruto didn't follow up with the usual barrage of attacks. Instead, he waited, watching, anticipating Kakashi's next move. The patience was new. Kakashi lunged forward with a kunai, aiming for Naruto's blind spot. But Naruto, now in sync with the battle's rhythm, sidestepped gracefully, countering with a swift slash from aim no Habakiri. The blade hummed as it cut through the air, but Kakashi barely dodged, sensing that Naruto's precision had become deadly. Kakashi's eye narrowed. He's learning. For the next several minutes, the sparring intensified, but there was a noticeable change in how Naruto approached the fight. He no longer relied on brute strength or erratic movements. Every swing of his sword, every step he took, had purpose behind it. And with that purpose came power. After one final clash, both Naruto and Kakashi stepped back, breathing heavily. The air between them was charged with the energy of their sparring. But there was no need to continue. Naruto had proved his point, not just to Kakashi, but to himself. Kakashi sheathed his kunai, a satisfied smile tugging at the edges of his mask. "You've come a long way, Naruto." That was impressive. Naruto smiled, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Thanks, Kakashi-sensei. I feel different now. More in control." Kakashi nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's the key to wielding power like this. It's not about overwhelming your opponents with strength alone. It's about understanding why you fight, and using that purpose to guide your actions." Naruto's grip tightened on Enma and aimed no Habakiri. He could feel the connection he had with the swords deepening. They weren't just weapons anymore. They were extensions of his will, tools to help him protect those he cared about. "Remember, Naruto," Kakashi continued, "the power you have isn't just a gift. It's a responsibility. Oden was a samurai, but you're a shinobi. You have to find a way to balance both paths." Naruto nodded, the weight of Kakashi's words settling over him. He had always fought with the dream of becoming Hokage in mind, but now he understood that the path to that goal wasn't just about gaining strength. It was about mastering himself, his heart, his convictions, and his power. Later that evening, Naruto found himself wandering through the village. The training session with Kakashi had left him exhausted, but his mind was still racing. He couldn't help but think about what Kakashi had said about balancing his new powers with his identity as a ninja. As he passed through the familiar streets of Konoha, Naruto noticed something strange. A group of villagers standing around in a circle, murmuring in confusion. Curious, Naruto made his way over to see what was going on. In the middle of the crowd, a small girl sat on the ground, crying softly. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. and her face was streaked with tears as she clutched a torn piece of fabric in her hands. Naruto's heart clenched. Without a second thought, he pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the girl. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently. The girl looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes but didn't respond. She held up the torn piece of fabric. A small, hand-sewn doll, now ripped in two. Naruto smiled softly. "Don't worry, we can fix that." With delicate hands, Naruto took the doll from her, quickly assessing the damage. His fingers fumbled a bit, but after a few moments, he managed to tie the pieces back together with a bit of string from his pouch. "There. All better," he said, handing the doll back to her. The girl's tears stopped as she looked at the mended doll. A small smile spread across her face, and she hugged it tightly. "Thank you, big brother," she said, her voice small but filled with gratitude. Naruto felt a warmth in his chest as he stood up, ruffling the girl's hair before turning to leave. As he walked away, the murmurings of the villagers faded behind him. Naruto smiled to himself, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over him. Moments like this reminded him of why he fought, not for power, not for recognition, but to protect the people he cared about and to bring peace to those who needed it. As the days turned into weeks, Naruto continued to train, not just with his swords but with his heart. He knew now that true strength came from within, from the love he had for his friends, his village, and the world he wanted to protect. And though he still had much to learn, Naruto felt confident that, with Oden's power and his own unwavering will, he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The path to becoming Hokage was still long, but Naruto was ready to walk it with purpose, heart, and the spirit of a true warrior. As night fell over Konoha, Naruto stood once again before the Hokage monument, gazing up at the stone faces of the previous leaders. The wind blew gently through his hair, carrying with it the promise of the future. "I'll make you proud, Dad," he whispered softly, the swords at his side glinting in the moonlight. The next few days passed in a blur of training and introspection. Naruto continued honing his skills with Enma and Aim no Habakiri, feeling more at ease with each passing day. But no matter how much progress he made, there was a part of him that couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. The deeper he delved into Kozuki Oden's power, the more he realized that there was a history, an untold story, that came with these swords. And he needed to understand that history if he was ever going to master them. One afternoon, as Naruto was taking a break from training, Jiraiya approached him with a serious look on his face. "Naruto, there's something we need to talk about," Jiraiya said, his tone unusually grave. Naruto wiped the sweat from his brow and looked at his mentor curiously. "What's up, pervy sage? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jiraiya didn't smile at the usual nickname. Instead, he gestured for Naruto to follow him as they walked to a secluded spot near the training grounds. Once they were alone, Jiraiya crossed his arms, his expression pensive. "I've been doing some digging, Naruto. You know how those swords, Enma and Aim no Habakiri, aren't just any ordinary weapons, right?" Naruto nodded. He had felt it from the moment he first wielded them. They were powerful, but they also carried a weight, a history that he barely understood. "Well," Jiraiya continued, "they're part of a legend about a warrior who lived long ago in a place far from here. Kozuki Oden. I've heard rumors about him in my travels, but I didn't think much of it until you awakened his power." Naruto's eyes widened. "What kind of legend?" Jiraiya's gaze sharpened. "Oden wasn't just a powerful samurai. He was a ruler, a man who fought for his people and stood up against impossible odds. His legacy is tied to a place called Wano, a land known for its isolation and its fierce warriors. But Oden's story is also one of tragedy. He was betrayed, executed in the prime of his life. His enemies feared his strength and what he stood for, freedom." Naruto's grip tightened on the hilt of Enma. The more he heard about Oden, the more it resonated with him. Oden had fought for what he believed in, just like Naruto had always done. But to be betrayed, to lose everything. Naruto couldn't imagine that kind of pain. Jiraiya watched Naruto's reaction carefully. "The swords you wield, they carry Oden's will. That's why you can feel his strength, his determination. But if you're going to truly master them, Naruto, You need to understand the weight of the responsibility that comes with them. Naruto frowned, his mind racing. I don't want to just use this power. I want to honor it. But how do I do that if I don't even know everything about Oden? Jiraiya nodded. That's exactly why we're going to take a little trip. Naruto blinked in confusion. A trip? Where? Wano. Jiraiya said simply. We're going to find out more about Oden's past and see if we can uncover the full story. There might be more to his power than what you've unlocked so far. Naruto's heart raced. The idea of traveling to Wano, a place tied to the legendary warrior whose power he now wielded, sent a thrill through him. It felt like the next step on his journey, not just as a ninja, but as someone who was coming into their own as a warrior. When do we leave? Naruto asked, already eager for the adventure. Jiraiya grinned. Soon. But first, there's something else we need to prepare for. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Something else? Jiraiya's expression darkened slightly. Word's gotten out about the Akatsuki's movements. They're looking for more Jinchuriki, and it's only a matter of time before they come after you again. We need to be ready. Naruto's excitement dimmed as the gravity of the situation settled over him. The Akatsuki. They were always lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now that he was growing stronger, it seemed inevitable that they would target him again. I'm not afraid of them, Naruto said, determination hardening his voice. If they come after me, I'll be ready. Jiraiya nodded, but his eyes held a seriousness that told Naruto the situation was more dire than he realized. That's why we need to use the time we have wisely. You're strong, Naruto, but the Akatsuki are dangerous. They're not just after you. They want the power of the Nine Tails. And they won't stop until they get it. Naruto's fists clenched at his sides. He had always known the Akatsuki were a threat, but now that he had Kozuki Oden's power, he felt an even greater responsibility to protect not just himself, but the village and the people he cared about. I won't let them take Kurama, Naruto said firmly. I'll protect the village. No matter what. Jiraiya's expression softened slightly. I know you will, kid. But it's not just about protecting the village. It's about surviving. The Akatsuki are ruthless. And if we're going to stop them, we need to make sure you're prepared for whatever they throw at you. Naruto nodded, his resolve hardening. He would train harder than ever before. He would master Oden's power and make sure that when the Akatsuki came, they would find a shinobi far stronger than they had ever expected. As the days passed, Naruto's training intensified. Jiraiya pushed him to his limits, not just physically but mentally as well. The balance between his ninja techniques and Oden's samurai skills became more fluid with each passing day. Naruto began to incorporate his Rasengan into sword techniques, creating devastating combinations that could overwhelm even the most skilled opponents. But more than the physical training, Naruto found himself reflecting on the philosophy behind Oden's power. The more he fought, the more he realized that being a warrior wasn't just about defeating enemies. It was about standing up for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against him. One evening, after an exhausting day of training, Naruto sat on a cliff overlooking the village. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over Konoha. He gazed out at the village he had sworn to protect, his mind filled with thoughts of the future. I'll become Hokage one day, Naruto murmured to himself, his heart swelling with determination. And I'll protect everyone, no matter what. But as he sat there, a shadow fell over him. Naruto tensed, sensing someone approaching from behind. Who's there? He called out, standing up and turning around. A figure stepped out of the shadows, and Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. Standing before him was a tall, cloaked man, his face partially obscured by the hood of his cloak. I've been watching you, Naruto Uzumaki, the man said, his voice low and cold. Naruto's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't recognize the man, but there was something unsettling about him, something dangerous. Who are you? Naruto demanded, his hand instinctively reaching for Enma. The man chuckled, stepping forward into the fading light. His face was still hidden, but Naruto could feel the intensity of his gaze. That's not important right now, the man said. What's important is that you're about to face challenges you can't even begin to imagine. And when the time comes, you'll need to decide whether you're willing to sacrifice everything for the power you seek. Naruto's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on his sword. "I don't know who you are. But if you're here to cause trouble, I'm not going to back down." The man's smile was barely visible under the shadow of his hood. "I'm not here to fight, Naruto. I'm here to give you a warning. The power you've inherited, Oden's power, it comes with a price. And soon, you'll have to decide whether you're willing to pay it." With those cryptic words, the man vanished into the shadows, leaving Naruto standing alone on the cliff, his heart racing with uncertainty. As the wind blew softly around him, Naruto couldn't help but wonder. What price would he have to pay for the power he now wielded? And would he be ready to face the consequences when the time came? Naruto stood motionless on the cliff, staring into the darkness where the mysterious man had disappeared. His heart pounded in his chest, and the cryptic words echoed in his mind. "The power you've inherited, Oden's power. It comes with a price." The idea that his newfound strength might have a hidden cost unsettled him. But what price was this stranger talking about? And who was he? As the wind rustled through the leaves of the trees below, Naruto slowly lowered his hand from Enma's hilt, trying to shake off the unease. He had faced many powerful enemies before, Orochimaru, the Akatsuki, even the Nine Tails itself. But something about this encounter felt different. It wasn't just about physical power or combat. This was something deeper. Something that tugged at the core of who he was becoming. "I won't let anything stop me," Naruto muttered to himself, his resolve hardening again. He knew there were challenges ahead, but he wasn't the kind of person who shied away from adversity. If there was a price to be paid for his power, he would face it head-on. After all, he had more than just himself to fight for. He had his friends, his village, and his dream of becoming Hokage. With that thought in mind, Naruto turned away from the cliff and made his way back to the village. The streets were quieter now, with only a few lights still glowing in windows. He moved through Konoha's streets with a purpose, heading straight for his favorite ramen shop. As Naruto sat at Ichiraku Ramen, savoring his meal, he couldn't help but think back to his training with Jiraiya. His mentor had been right. Oden's power wasn't just about strength, but about heart and conviction. Naruto had always fought with those ideals in mind. But now, more than ever, he realized how crucial they were. Power without purpose was dangerous, and he didn't want to lose himself in the pursuit of strength. Ayame, the shop owner's daughter, noticed Naruto's quiet demeanor as she served him another bowl. "You're awfully thoughtful tonight, Naruto. Everything okay?" Naruto snapped out of his thoughts and grinned up at her. "Yeah. Just got a lot on my mind." "You thinking?" Ayame teased, laughing softly. "Must be something important." Naruto chuckled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Yeah, I guess you could say that." As he slurped his noodles, he felt a presence approaching. He didn't need to look up to know who it was. The familiar aura of his sensei always preceded him. Jiraiya sat down next to Naruto, ordering a bowl of ramen for himself. "So, you look like you've seen a ghost." Naruto sighed. "I don't know if it was a ghost, but something weird happened." Jiraiya raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "Weird how?" Naruto recounted his encounter with the cloaked man, describing the cryptic warning and the sense of danger he felt. Jiraiya listened carefully, his expression growing more serious as Naruto finished. "A mysterious man with a warning about Oden's power." "Huh? Sounds like someone knows more about these swords than we thought. You think he's part of the Akatsuki?" Naruto asked, his voice lowering. The thought of the Akatsuki knowing about his new power made him uneasy. "It's possible," Jiraiya said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "But it could also be someone with their own agenda. There are plenty of people out there who'd be interested in a power like Oden's." Naruto frowned, his mind swirling with questions. What do you think he meant by a price? Jiraiya stayed silent for a moment, considering the question. Power like this always comes with consequences, Naruto. It's not always about giving something up. It could be about responsibility. Choices you'll have to make down the line. Maybe this man was trying to warn you that mastering Oden's power could change the course of your life in ways you can't predict yet. Naruto's stomach twisted slightly. He hadn't thought about it like that. For him, power had always been about protecting those he loved. But what if wielding Oden's power forced him to make choices that put those same people at risk? I don't want to hurt anyone. Pervy sage. Naruto said quietly. I just want to protect everyone. Jiraiya smiled gently, placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. And that's what makes you different. Kid. Oden's power isn't going to change who you are. It's going to amplify it. If you stay true to your heart, you'll be fine. Naruto looked down at his bowl of ramen, the weight of Jiraiya's words sinking in. I hope you're right. The next morning, Naruto resumed his training with a renewed sense of focus. He could feel the power of Enma and Aim no Habakiri surging through him with every swing. But instead of simply relying on brute strength, he worked on blending the techniques he had learned from Jiraiya and Kakashi with the samurai discipline he was developing. His movements became more fluid, more intentional. As he trained, memories of Kozuki Oden's legacy continued to surface in his mind. Oden had been a man of honor, a warrior who fought not just for his own gain but for the freedom of his people. Naruto felt a kinship with him. Both of them had a strong desire to protect others, no matter the cost. But Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that the price the cloaked man had mentioned might not just be about strength or sacrifice. There was something deeper, something tied to the very essence of Oden's legacy. As the sun set and his training came to a close, Naruto found himself drawn once again to the cliff overlooking Konoha. The village lights twinkled below him, a reminder of everything he was fighting for. But this time, he wasn't alone. A figure stood at the edge of the cliff, gazing out over the village just as he had done. Naruto's heart skipped a beat as he recognized the man, the same cloaked figure from the night before. Naruto's hand instinctively reached for Enma, but the man raised a hand in a gesture of peace. I told you before, I'm not here to fight, the man said, his voice calm but firm. Naruto stepped forward cautiously, keeping a safe distance. Then why are you here? What do you want from me? The man turned slightly, just enough for Naruto to see a glimpse of his face. His features were sharp, his eyes cold and calculating. I came to warn you again. You're walking a dangerous path. Naruto Uzumaki. Oden's power is not something that can be taken lightly. Naruto clenched his fists. I'm not afraid of it. I'll use this power to protect my friends and the village. The man's lips curved into a faint smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. And that's exactly why you'll fail. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. What are you talking about? You still don't understand, the man said, stepping closer. This power you've inherited, it's more than just strength. It's a legacy of war, of sacrifice. If you continue down this path, you'll be forced to make choices that will break you. Naruto's heart raced, but he refused to back down. I don't care what kind of choices I have to make. I'll never betray my friends. I'll protect them, no matter what. The man's smile faded, his expression turning cold once more. We'll see. The time will come, Naruto Uzumaki, when you'll have to choose between your power and your heart. And when that moment arrives, you may find that you're not as strong as you think. Before Naruto could respond, the man vanished into the shadows once again, leaving him standing alone on the cliff, the weight of his words pressing down on him. Naruto stood there for a long time, staring out at the village below, his mind swirling with doubt. He had always believed in his strength, his will to protect. But now, for the first time, he felt a shadow of uncertainty creeping into his heart. What if the man was right? What if the power he had inherited came at a cost too great to bear? And what if? When the time came, Naruto wasn't ready to face it. As the night deepened, Naruto's resolve hardened once more. No matter what lay ahead, he would continue to fight, for his friends, for his village, and for the legacy of Kozuki Oden. But in the back of his mind, the cloaked man's words lingered, haunting him with the promise of a choice that would one day shake him to his core. The following days passed in a strange limbo for Naruto. On the surface, it was business as usual. He trained hard, met with his friends, and took part in missions around Konoha. But beneath the calm, the words of the cloaked man continued to gnaw at him. Every time he wielded Enma or Aim no Habakiri, the power he had inherited from Kozuki Oden felt both exhilarating and ominous. It was as if the swords were constantly reminding him of the weight of the legacy he now carried. Naruto had always been the kind of person to push aside doubt. He had learned to do so from a young age, to never question his ability to overcome the obstacles life threw at him. But now, for the first time in years, He couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something he wasn't fully prepared for. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the moon began to rise, Naruto found himself once again on the cliff overlooking Konoha. It was the same place where he had encountered the mysterious man, and where the doubts about Oden's power had first begun to take root. He had come here to clear his head, to think. But tonight, he wasn't alone. "Hey, Naruto." Naruto turned to see Sasuke standing a few feet away, his usual stoic expression softening just slightly as he looked at him. It was a rare moment for the Uchiha, who rarely opened up to anyone. But Naruto had always been able to read his friend, even when he was silent. "Sasuke," Naruto said, his voice lighter than he felt. "What's up?" Sasuke stepped forward, his eyes scanning the horizon. "I could ask you the same thing. You've been distracted lately. More than usual." Naruto smiled faintly, scratching the back of his head. "I guess you could say that. Just thinking." Sasuke glanced at him sideways. "About what?" Naruto hesitated. He had never been the type to keep things to himself, especially with Sasuke. But the truth was, he didn't even fully understand the thoughts swirling in his head. The man's warning, Oden's power, the looming threat of the Akatsuki. Everything felt so interconnected and overwhelming. "About my training," Naruto said finally, avoiding the deeper questions for the moment. "I feel like I'm getting stronger. But there's something else. Something off about it." Sasuke's sharp eyes narrowed slightly, sensing that Naruto wasn't being entirely forthcoming. But he didn't press the issue, instead folding his arms and leaning against the cliff. "Power is always a double-edged sword," he said after a beat. "You know that better than anyone." Naruto turned to face Sasuke, his eyes narrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" Sasuke met his gaze with a piercing look, his voice laced with experience. "I've seen it before. People gain strength, and they think they're invincible. They think they can control everything. But sooner or later, that power demands something from them. Sometimes, what it demands is too much." Naruto's breath caught in his throat. Sasuke's words struck close to the heart, a reminder of everything he had been through, from his own struggles with power to the battles that had torn their lives apart. The idea that Oden's power could be a burden rather than a gift suddenly felt much more real. "I'm not like that," Naruto muttered, trying to brush off the doubt. "I'll never let my power control me. I won't let it change who I am." Sasuke looked at him for a long moment, his eyes softening ever so slightly. "I hope you're right, Naruto. But don't forget that no one can carry the weight of the world alone. Sometimes you need others to help you bear it." Naruto didn't respond at first, his gaze dropping to the ground. Sasuke had always been one to focus on individual strength, so hearing him say that was both surprising and humbling. But Naruto knew Sasuke was right. He wasn't alone. He had his friends, his village, and his sensei guiding him. And with that support, he could overcome anything. "Thanks, Sasuke," Naruto said quietly, his voice firm. "I won't forget that." Sasuke gave a rare nod of approval before turning to leave. "Just make sure you don't end up like those people who get consumed by their own strength." Naruto watched him walk away, the weight of his words lingering in the cool night air. The breeze carried with it the scent of distant thunderstorms, and the sky above seemed to darken as if in response to the storm that was brewing in his own heart. The next morning, Naruto was once again in the training grounds, swinging Enma with renewed determination. He had spent the night thinking about Sasuke's words, and about the warning from the mysterious cloaked man. He couldn't afford to ignore the possibility that Oden's power would demand something from him. If he was going to wield it, he needed to understand it fully. And if there was a price to be paid, he would face it head on, just as he always had. But as he practiced, he couldn't shake the sense that something was missing. He was wielding the swords well, but they were more than just weapons. They were symbols of a legacy that came with its own burdens. He had to understand what it meant to be the inheritor of Oden's power, not just in battle, but in life. "Focus, Naruto," he muttered to himself, raising Enma high, the staff shimmering in the sunlight. He needed to be ready for whatever came next. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled, a low rumble that sent a chill through his bones. His instincts kicked in, and he immediately dropped into a defensive stance, his senses heightened. A figure appeared on the horizon, moving at an unnatural speed. Naruto squinted, recognizing the chakra signature. His blood ran cold. "Akatsuki," he whispered under his breath. The figure grew closer, revealing a tall, cloaked figure whose presence felt like a shadow itself, intense, ominous, and dangerous. Naruto's heart rate quickened. He had no doubt who this was. It was Pain, the leader of the Akatsuki. Naruto's mind raced. He had been expecting a confrontation with the Akatsuki, but he hadn't expected it to come so soon. And the presence of Pain signaled that the organization was moving in on him. Perhaps sensing the power he had gained from Oden. "Naruto Uzumaki," Pain's voice echoed, his tone cold and detached, as if he were speaking to a mere insect. "I've come for you. Your power, it's more than we anticipated. But it doesn't matter. You will fall just like the rest." Naruto stood tall, his resolve unwavering. The time had come. He could feel Enma and Aim no Habakiri humming with power at his side, ready to be unleashed. This was no longer just about protecting Konoha or his friends. This was a test of everything he had learned, from the samurai techniques of Kozuki Oden to the will he had forged in his own heart. "I won't fall," Naruto said, his voice steady and full of fire. "Not today. Not ever." Pain's eyes flickered with a brief spark of interest, but his expression remained unreadable. "We'll see about that." With those words, the battle began. The clash of wills had started. Naruto against Pain, the inheritor of Oden's power against the force of the Akatsuki. And this battle would be the first of many, as the price of Oden's strength slowly began to reveal itself. The tension in the air was thick as Naruto stood his ground, staring down Pain with unwavering resolve. He could feel the weight of the upcoming battle bearing down on him, but it didn't shake his determination. This was the moment he had been preparing for. The culmination of his training with Jiraiya and the immense power he had inherited from Kozuki Oden. And now, he was ready to face the leader of the Akatsuki head-on. Pain's Rinnegan eyes glowed with eerie intensity, scanning Naruto as if analyzing every movement, every breath. His voice rang out, cold and emotionless. "Naruto Uzumaki, you carry a burden far greater than you realize. This power you've inherited is dangerous. It's a relic of a bygone era, and it will only bring chaos to the world. You're a threat to peace." Naruto's grip on Enma tightened, and his heart pounded in his chest. He knew the power he possessed was immense, and he had no illusions about how dangerous it could be if misused. But he wasn't fighting for destruction or chaos. He was fighting for his friends, his village, and the dream of a world where people could live without fear. "You're wrong," Naruto shot back, his voice filled with conviction. "I'm not here to bring chaos. I'm here to protect the people I care about, and that includes peace. I won't let you or anyone else take that away." Pain's expression remained unmoved. "You speak of protection, yet you wield a power that can destroy entire nations." Oden's strength was forged in conflict, just as the Nine Tails was. Power like that cannot be controlled. It only consumes. Naruto's eyes narrowed. "I won't let it consume me. I'm not Oden. And I'm not just a Jinchuriki. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. And I'll use this power to create a better world." Without another word, Naruto drew Enma, the sword gleaming in the dim light of the overcast sky. The weight of the weapon felt natural in his hand now, as though it had become an extension of himself. Oden's power flowed through him, filling every fiber of his being with a strength that was both ancient and primal. This wasn't just about raw power anymore, it was about mastering it, using it with purpose. Pain's 6 bodies fanned out around him in a semicircle, ready to strike. Each one was a manifestation of a different aspect of the Rinnegan, and together, they formed a nearly invincible force. But Naruto didn't back down. He had fought stronger enemies before, and he had always found a way to overcome them. With a sharp breath, Naruto surged forward, his speed blurring as he closed the distance between him and the first of Pain's bodies. The Diva Path raised its hand, ready to unleash a repulsive force. But Naruto was faster. He swung Enma in a wide arc, the sword humming with energy. The blade cut through the air with precision, aiming for Pain's chest. But Pain was quick to react, just as Naruto's sword came within inches of striking. A powerful wave of Shinra Tensei erupted from the Diva Path's hand, sending Naruto flying backward. He slammed into the ground, skidding across the dirt before catching himself and leaping to his feet. Pain's voice echoed through the battlefield. "You're reckless, Naruto. Power alone isn't enough." Naruto wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, a grin spreading across his face. "Maybe. But I'm just getting started." He thrust Enma into the ground and in a flash, drew aim no Habakiri with his other hand. The air around him seemed to shimmer as the legendary blades pulsed with energy. The swords weren't just weapons, they were keys to unlocking the depths of Oden's spirit. A spirit that refused to bow to anyone. Naruto focused, feeling the pull of the techniques he had been learning. With a quick movement, he charged again. But this time he was more methodical. He weaved between the paths of pain, dodging their attacks with nimble footwork and countering with strikes of his own. Aim no Habakiri flashed as it sliced through the air, narrowly missing the Asura path as it tried to counter. Pain retaliated by sending a barrage of missiles from the Asura path. But Naruto was already on the move. Using his newfound speed, he leapt high into the air, his body twisting as he dodged the projectiles. As he descended, he focused his chakra into Enma, preparing for a powerful downward strike. "Take this," Naruto shouted, bringing Enma down with a force that sent shockwaves rippling through the ground. The Preta path raised its hand, absorbing the chakra from Naruto's attack. But Naruto anticipated this. Using the momentum from the failed strike, he spun in midair and brought aim no Habakiri crashing into the Preta path's neck, severing its head cleanly from its body. Pain's eyes widened slightly, but his expression remained cold. The Preta path collapsed, but the remaining 5 bodies moved in unison, closing in on Naruto from all sides. Naruto's pulse quickened, and he jumped back to create distance, both swords ready in his hands. His breathing was heavy, but his resolve was unwavering. He knew he couldn't let the battle drag on too long. Pain's ability to control the Rinnegan's various powers made him a formidable foe, and every second he wasted could be used against him. As Pain's bodies advanced, Naruto's mind raced, searching for a strategy to take them down. But then, something clicked in his head. His training with Jiraiya, Oden's spirit, the techniques he had been honing, all of it came together in that moment. Naruto sheathed aim no Habakiri and raised Enma high, focusing all of his chakra into the blade. He could feel the swords resonating with his will, the power within them becoming one with his own chakra. This was more than just an ordinary slash. This was the culmination of everything he had learned. "Let's finish this," Naruto shouted, his voice echoing across the battlefield. In an instant, Naruto vanished. His speed was so great that even Pain's Rinnegan had difficulty tracking his movements. He reappeared behind the Diva path, his sword slashing through the air with a powerful, precise strike. The Diva path tried to react with another Shinra Tensei, but it was too late. Enma connected with the Diva path's back, cutting cleanly through the body before Naruto followed up with a second strike from aim no Habakiri, severing the connection between the Rinnegan and the Diva path. The body crumbled, lifeless. The other paths of Pain hesitated for the briefest of moments, a flicker of uncertainty crossing their faces. Naruto didn't waste the opportunity. He dashed forward, his blades moving in a blur, slicing through the Asura path and the human path in quick succession. With only 2 paths remaining, Pain's voice rang out, now laced with frustration. "You've grown stronger, Naruto. But this is far from over." The Naraka path and Animal path summoned powerful creatures to defend against Naruto's assault. But Naruto was undeterred. His focus sharpened, his heart burning with the desire to protect everything he held dear. Naruto lunged forward, cutting down the summoned creatures with swift, precise strikes. His movements were fluid, each step calculated as he pushed forward. With a final burst of chakra, he closed the distance between himself and the Naraka path, severing its head with one clean motion of Enma. Only the Animal path remained. But before Naruto could make his move, the ground trembled, and a massive Chibaku Tensei began forming in the sky, a gravity well pulling the earth and everything around it toward the center. Pain's true form, the one controlling the bodies from afar, was making his move. Naruto narrowed his eyes, determination flashing in them. He had one shot at this. Channeling everything he had left, Naruto gathered chakra into both of his blades. He slashed the air with Enma and Aim no Habakiri, creating two arcs of energy that surged toward the animal path, obliterating it in a flash of light. With the last of Pain's bodies destroyed, Naruto turned his attention to the massive sphere in the sky. He gripped both swords tightly, focusing every last ounce of chakra he had into one final attack. This ends now. Naruto roared. In one swift motion, he leapt into the air and brought his swords down, unleashing a powerful slash that cut through the core of the Chibaku Tensei, shattering it into pieces. The debris scattered across the battlefield as Naruto landed on the ground, panting but victorious. The battle was over, but the weight of the fight lingered heavily in the air. Naruto stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving as he surveyed the destruction around him. Pain's true form was still out there, watching, waiting. But Naruto wasn't done yet. He sheathed his swords and turned his gaze toward the horizon. This battle had only been the beginning. As the dust settled from the battle, Naruto stood alone in the center of the ruined battlefield, his heart still racing. The destruction caused by Pain's Chibaku Tensei and his relentless attacks left deep scars on the land. But more importantly, they left a deeper mark on Naruto himself. He had pushed his new powers to the limit, drawing on everything he had learned from Kozuki Oden's techniques and his own unyielding will. Yet, despite the victory, a lingering feeling gnawed at him, something ominous. Pain's true body, Nagato, was still out there, pulling the strings from the shadows. Naruto could feel his presence, faint but palpable, like a dark cloud that hadn't fully dispersed. His grip tightened around the hilts of Enma and Aim no Habakiri, the two legendary swords still buzzing with residual energy from the battle. Naruto took a deep breath, calming his nerves as he sheathed both swords. He knew this fight wasn't over. Not yet. From behind him, a familiar voice broke the silence. "You did it, Naruto." Naruto turned to see Kakashi and Sakura approaching, their faces a mix of awe and relief. Kakashi's Sharingan still flickered with residual chakra, his expression calm but proud. Sakura's eyes were wide, reflecting the devastation around them. "Kakashi-sensei." "Sakura." Naruto called out, a tired but genuine smile crossing his face. Sakura rushed forward, throwing her arms around him in a tight hug, her voice filled with relief. "I was so worried. When we saw the sky darken and the Chibaku Tensei forming, I thought, it's okay, Sakura," Naruto said, gently patting her back. "I'm fine. It's over, at least for now." Kakashi stood a few feet away, arms crossed, his single visible eye scanning the area. "You did well, Naruto. But we both know this isn't the end. The real pain is still out there." Naruto nodded, his smile fading as the reality of the situation settled in. "Yeah. I can feel him. Nagato. He's somewhere close." Kakashi stepped forward, his tone more serious. "We've already gathered intelligence on his possible location. We'll have to move quickly. If we can find him before he regroups or sends reinforcements, we can stop this once and for all." Naruto's eyes narrowed with determination. "Let's finish this. I need to talk to him, to understand why he's doing all of this." Kakashi raised an eyebrow, surprised by Naruto's words. "Talk to him? Naruto, this man has destroyed entire villages, killed innocent people. He's not someone you can reason with." "I know," Naruto replied, his voice steady. "But I have to try. If there's a chance I can reach him, then maybe we can stop this cycle of hatred before it spirals even more out of control. I've seen what unchecked power can do. Oden's legacy taught me that." Kakashi studied Naruto's face for a moment before nodding. "All right. But we'll be ready if things go south." Sakura pulled back from Naruto, wiping away tears that had started to form. "Just be careful, Naruto. We'll back you up, no matter what." Naruto smiled at her, grateful for her concern. "Thanks, Sakura." The trio made their way through the forest, following the trail of chakra that Naruto had sensed earlier. As they moved swiftly through the trees, Naruto's mind was racing. He had grown stronger, far beyond what he thought possible. But with that strength came new questions. What had the cloaked man meant when he warned him about Oden's power? Was this battle with pain the beginning of something bigger? After what felt like hours, they finally arrived at a hidden cave, concealed behind a waterfall. The dark energy inside was palpable. Nagato was definitely here. Naruto exchanged glances with Kakashi and Sakura, both of whom nodded silently. They entered the cave, the echo of rushing water behind them fading as they descended deeper into the darkness. At the center of the cave, they found Nagato, thin, emaciated, and sitting in a mechanical chair. His frail body connected to several rods that seemed to be sustaining him. His Rinnegan eyes glowed eerily in the dim light, watching them as they approached. "So? You've come," Nagato said, his voice weak but filled with a quiet intensity. Naruto stepped forward, locking eyes with the man who had caused so much pain and destruction. "I didn't come here to kill you, Nagato. I came to understand. Why? Why did you cause all this destruction? Why do you believe this is the way to peace?" Nagato's eyes narrowed slightly as he gazed at Naruto. "Peace? There is no such thing as true peace. Only a cycle of hatred and suffering. The more power people gain, the more they use it to dominate others. I have seen it time and time again. The only way to break that cycle is to make everyone understand true pain. Only then can the world know peace." Naruto's fists clenched at his sides. "That's not peace. That's just more suffering. You're creating the same hatred that you say you want to stop." Nagato's expression remained stoic. "You don't understand, Naruto. You've never experienced the true depths of loss, of watching your loved ones die in front of you, of seeing your home destroyed over and over again. I've lived through that, and I will do whatever it takes to stop that from happening again, even if it means becoming the villain." Naruto shook his head, his heart heavy with the weight of Nagato's words. "I do understand. I've lost people too. I know what it's like to feel alone, to want to protect the people you care about no matter the cost. But I also know that there's another way. I refuse to believe that pain is the only answer." Nagato's eyes flickered with something, perhaps doubt, or perhaps recognition. For the first time, there was a crack in his icy demeanor. "Another way?" Nagato echoed softly. "Is that what you believe, Naruto? Do you truly think you can change the world without causing pain?" Naruto's voice was firm, unwavering. "Yes. I believe in my friends. In the people who have stood by me. I believe that together, we can create a world where people don't have to live in fear. Where power isn't something to be feared, but something that can protect." Nagato's gaze softened for a moment, as if considering Naruto's words. But then his expression hardened again. "Idealism won't save this world. Reality is cruel, and the only way to ensure peace is through power." Naruto stepped closer, his eyes blazing with determination. "Maybe reality is cruel, but I'll fight to change it. I'll fight for a future where people can live without being crushed by power. And I'll keep fighting, no matter how many people tell me it's impossible." There was a long silence. Nagato stared at Naruto, the weight of his own convictions clashing with the hope Naruto radiated. Finally, Nagato lowered his gaze, his voice a whisper. "Jiraiya believed in you." Naruto's heart skipped a beat at the mention of his former mentor. He could feel the weight of Jiraiya's teachings, the way the old man had shaped both him and Nagato in different ways. "Jiraiya-sensei believed in you too," Naruto said softly. "He never gave up on you. And I won't either." Nagato closed his eyes, his body sagging in the chair as if the weight of the world was finally catching up to him. "Perhaps I've been wrong. Perhaps there is another way." Naruto stepped forward, placing a hand on Nagato's chair, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "You can still help me make that future real, Nagato." For a long moment, Nagato remained silent. And then, slowly, his Rinnegan eyes opened. There was no malice in them now, only a quiet acceptance. "I see now. Jiraiya was right. I leave the future to you, Naruto." With those words, Nagato raised his hand, his chakra flickering weakly. Naruto watched as Nagato performed a series of hand seals, and suddenly, the air in the cave shifted. A powerful aura of chakra enveloped the area as Nagato used his remaining strength to cast the Rinne rebirth technique. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. "Nagato, what are you?" "I'm Making amends, Nagato said, his voice barely above a whisper. This is my atonement. With that, the souls of all those who had died in Pain's assault on Konoha began to return, their lives restored by Nagato's final act of redemption. As the light from the technique faded, Nagato's frail body slumped forward, lifeless. Naruto stood there in stunned silence, watching as the man who had once been his enemy made the ultimate sacrifice to atone for his actions. A heavy silence filled the cave, broken only by the sound of Sakura's soft sobs and Kakashi's quiet sigh. Naruto looked down at Nagato's still form, his heart heavy with both grief and gratitude. You did the right thing, Nagato, he whispered. Thank you. Outside the cave, the sun was beginning to rise, casting a warm golden light over the horizon. Naruto, Kakashi, and Sakura emerged from the cave, the weight of the battle still lingering in the air. But there was also a sense of hope, a feeling that, maybe, just maybe, the cycle of hatred could be broken. As Naruto gazed out at the sunrise, he felt a quiet resolve settle within him. He still had a long way to go, and there would be more battles ahead. But he would face them with the strength of his friends, the lessons of his mentors, and the power of Oden's legacy. And most importantly, he would face them with hope for a better future. As the rays of the rising sun bathed Konoha in soft, golden light, Naruto, Kakashi, and Sakura slowly made their way back to the village. The weight of Nagato's sacrifice still hung heavily in the air, and despite the victory over pain, the destruction that had befallen Konoha was an ever-present reminder of the fragility of peace. Naruto glanced at the village ahead, the broken buildings and smoldering remains of homes reminding him of the immense battle that had taken place. He clenched his fists. Although Nagato had restored the lives lost during Pain's assault, the damage to the village was far from repaired. But beyond the wreckage, Naruto could feel a new sense of hope stirring inside him. Nagato's final act had given him something invaluable. A chance to rebuild. Not just physically but spiritually. Naruto, Kakashi said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm but tinged with something else. Respect. Perhaps pride. You managed to do what even Jiraiya-sensei couldn't. You didn't just defeat Pain, you reached him. Naruto looked at Kakashi, his usual boisterous grin replaced by a thoughtful expression. Yeah. But it wasn't just me. It was everything Jiraiya-sensei taught us, and the people who believed in me. I just don't want anyone to suffer the way Nagato did. Sakura, who had been walking silently beside Naruto, gave him a soft smile. That's why you're different, Naruto. You always find a way to see the good in people, even when it's hidden behind so much pain. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, embarrassed by the praise but grateful for it. I just do what feels right. You know? Kakashi chuckled softly. Well, whatever it is, keep doing it. As they approached the village gates, the trio could already see the villagers starting to gather. Despite the devastation around them, there was an undeniable energy of relief, and even joy. The Hokage's mansion may have been reduced to rubble, but the people of Konoha were alive, thanks to Nagato's sacrifice. Among the crowd, Naruto spotted familiar faces. Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Hinata, and even Shino, all of them bearing signs of exhaustion but alive and well. The villagers began to cheer as Naruto and his companions approached, their voices swelling into a chorus of celebration. The hero of Konoha had returned. Naruto. Shikamaru called out, jogging over with a wide grin on his face. "And you did it. I don't know how you managed to stop him, but I knew if anyone could, it'd be you." Naruto smiled sheepishly. "It wasn't just me. Everyone played their part. Nagato, Pain, he wasn't what I thought he'd be in the end." Shikamaru raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Either way, the village owes you a lot, Naruto." Before Naruto could respond, another familiar voice called out, soft yet filled with emotion. "Naruto." He turned to see Hinata, standing a little behind the crowd. Her cheeks were flushed, and she seemed hesitant. But her eyes were filled with relief. She looked as though she had been waiting for this moment, for the confirmation that Naruto had survived, that everything was going to be okay. Naruto blinked in surprise. his thoughts flashing back to the moment when Hinata had stood in front of him, ready to sacrifice herself against pain. Her words, her courage, her confession had left him stunned, even in the heat of battle. "Hinata," Naruto said, walking toward her. He didn't know what to say at first, but as he got closer, he could see how much it had meant to her just to see him alive. But before he could say anything more, Hinata rushed forward, wrapping her arms around him in a tight embrace. For a moment, Naruto froze, surprised by the sudden gesture. But then he relaxed and hugged her back, smiling softly. "Thank you, Hinata," Naruto whispered, his voice sincere. "For everything." Hinata pulled back slightly, her face red but her eyes shining with happiness. "I knew you'd win, Naruto." As Naruto smiled back at her, the cheers from the villagers grew louder. Tsunade, who had been gravely injured earlier during the battle, was being carried on a stretcher toward the village by medical ninja, despite her weakened state. Her eyes found Naruto, and she gave him a tired but approving nod. "You've done more than any of us could have hoped for, Naruto," she said, her voice hoarse but filled with pride. "Konoha will rebuild. And you've shown everyone the true strength of a ninja who fights not just with power but with heart." Naruto's chest swelled with a mix of pride and humility. He wasn't used to so much attention, and hearing Tsunade, the fifth Hokage herself, praise him felt surreal. He glanced at the faces around him, his friends, his fellow villagers, his comrades, and for the first time, he truly felt like he belonged. He had always dreamed of being Hokage, but now he realized that being a hero wasn't about titles or recognition. It was about protecting the people he cared about and finding a way to bring peace to everyone, just like Jiraiya had taught him. As the days passed, the village began its slow but steady recovery. Buildings were rebuilt, and life gradually returned to normal. However, within Naruto, a sense of responsibility continued to grow. He had inherited Kozuki Oden's strength, but also his will, the will to protect and lead his people. Naruto found himself spending more time alone, training at the outskirts of the village, pushing the limits of his newfound power. He had only scratched the surface of what Oden's techniques could offer. And with the threat of more powerful enemies like the Akatsuki still looming, he knew he couldn't afford to slow down. One evening, while he was practicing his swordsmanship with Enma and Aim no Habakiri, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the training ground. It was Kakashi, his ever-present mask concealing his expression, but his one visible eye betraying a sense of curiosity. "Still pushing yourself, I see," Kakashi said as he approached. Naruto wiped the sweat from his brow and nodded. "Yeah. I have to be ready. The Akatsuki aren't gone yet. And there's still so much I don't understand about Oden's power. I can feel it, there's more to this than just strength." Kakashi watched Naruto for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a soft sigh, he walked over and leaned against a nearby tree. "Oden was a warrior, through and through," Kakashi said quietly. "But his true strength came from his heart, his desire to protect the people he loved and his unbreakable will. You remind me of him in a lot of ways, Naruto." Naruto blinked in surprise. "You think so?" Kakashi nodded. "You've already proven yourself capable in battle. But what will truly set you apart is how you choose to use that power. Oden was feared by many, but he was also loved. That's a balance you'll need to find for yourself." Naruto sheathed his swords and sat down on the grass, his mind churning. "I don't want people to fear me. I want to protect them, like Oden did. But I also want to find a way to stop this cycle of hatred." Kakashi smiled beneath his mask. "That's a heavy burden to carry. But I think you're up to the task. Just remember, you don't have to do it alone." Naruto looked up at Kakashi, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. He knew that his journey was far from over. But with his friends by his side and Oden's legacy guiding him, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the sun began to set, casting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Naruto stood up, his resolve stronger than ever. The world was changing, and Naruto Uzumaki was ready to lead that change, just as Kozuki Oden had once done in his time. The village continued its recovery, and as the days passed, Naruto found himself shouldering new responsibilities. He wasn't the same boy who used to run around causing mischief. Nor was he just the orphan who sought everyone's approval. He had become someone the village relied on, not just as a hero, but as a future leader. One morning, Naruto was summoned to the Hokage's office, which was now a temporary tent set up in the center of the village. Inside, Tsunade, still recovering from her injuries, sat behind her desk, with Shikamaru standing at her side, holding a clipboard. "Naruto, come in," Tsunade said, her voice still carrying the authority of a Hokage despite her weakened state. Naruto stepped forward, noticing the serious atmosphere. "You wanted to see me, Granny?" Tsunade raised an eyebrow at the nickname but didn't scold him. "I'll get straight to the point. There's been some talk among the village elders, about you." Naruto frowned. "About me? What kind of talk?" Shikamaru sighed, flipping through his clipboard. "They've been discussing what happened with Pain, and how you've become a symbol of hope for the village. Some of them think you should be taking on more leadership roles." "Leadership?" Naruto repeated, blinking in confusion. "But I'm not Hokage yet." Tsunade leaned forward slightly, her expression serious. "You're not Hokage yet, but you've shown qualities of a leader. You've united people who once doubted you, and you've proven that you can protect this village. The elders see that." Naruto scratched his head, feeling a bit overwhelmed. "So, what are they saying?" "They're saying you're ready for bigger responsibilities," Shikamaru said, looking up from his clipboard. "And, to be honest, I agree with them. But it's not just about power or strength. It's about guiding the next generation and making sure they understand what it means to protect the village." Tsunade nodded. "I've been thinking about this as well. You're not just a symbol of strength now, Naruto. People look to you for hope. And with your new abilities," she gestured toward the swords hanging on his back, "you've become more than just a ninja. You've taken on the mantle of a leader. Whether you realize it or not." Naruto stared at them both, feeling the weight of their words sinking in. It wasn't that he didn't want the responsibility. He had always dreamed of being Hokage, after all. But this felt different. This wasn't just about achieving a title. It was about becoming the kind of person people could rely on. The way Oden had been for his people. "I get it," Naruto said finally, his voice steady. "I know there's still a lot I need to learn. But I'll do whatever I can to protect the village and make sure everyone's safe. I want to lead, but I want to do it the right way." Tsunade smiled faintly, her eyes softening. "That's the answer I was hoping to hear." Shikamaru let out a small sigh of relief. "Good. Because we've got a lot of work ahead of us. And we're going to need all the help we can get." First things first, suddenly, the tent flap opened, and a messenger ninja rushed in, panting from exertion. "Lady Tsunade." The ninja gasped. "Urgent news from the Land of Lightning." Tsunade's expression immediately hardened. "What is it?" "The Raikage has requested an emergency summit between the 5 Kage. The Akatsuki are moving again." Naruto's heart skipped a beat. The Akatsuki. Despite Nagato's change of heart, the organization was still out there. And they weren't going to stop just because their leader had fallen. "When's the summit?" Tsunade asked, her tone sharp. "In 3 days. At the neutral territory in the Land of Iron," the messenger reported. Tsunade turned her attention to Naruto. "Looks like you're about to get that leadership role sooner than you thought. You'll be coming with me to the Kage Summit." "Naruto." Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? At a Kage Summit?" Shikamaru crossed his arms, nodding thoughtfully. "Makes sense. You're the one who has the most experience with the Akatsuki now. And you're one of the key targets because of the 9 tails. Plus, the Raikage is going to want answers about what happened with Sasuke." Naruto felt a knot tighten in his stomach at the mention of Sasuke's name. Ever since he had learned that Sasuke was working with the Akatsuki, it had been like a shadow looming over him. No matter how much he tried to focus on protecting the village, the thought of his former friend still gnawed at him. Tsunade's gaze softened, as if she could sense what Naruto was thinking. "I know it's complicated, Naruto. But this summit isn't just about Sasuke. It's about how we're going to deal with the Akatsuki moving forward. The world is changing. And we need to be ready." Naruto nodded, his resolve hardening. "I understand. I'll go." "Good," Tsunade said, standing up slowly. "We leave in 2 days. Get yourself ready, Naruto." The next 2 days passed quickly. Naruto trained relentlessly, pushing himself to further master Kozuki Oden's techniques. He spent hours practicing with Enma and Aim no Habakiri, feeling more connected to the swords with each passing day. But it wasn't just about physical strength anymore. Naruto knew that his role at the Cage Summit would require him to think strategically, to understand the politics and tensions between the villages. The night before their departure, Naruto found himself standing at the edge of the Hokage monument, looking out over the village. The moonlight cast a soft glow over the half-rebuilt buildings, and the cool night air was filled with the sound of crickets. "You're still out here?" Naruto turned to see Kakashi approaching, his hands casually stuffed into his pockets. "Couldn't sleep," Naruto admitted. "There's too much on my mind." Kakashi stood beside him, looking out at the village as well. "That's normal. A lot's changed in a short amount of time." Naruto nodded, letting out a long breath. "Do you think I'm ready for this? The Cage Summit, I mean." Kakashi was silent for a moment. Then he turned to Naruto, his visible eyes soft with understanding. "You've come a long way, Naruto. You're not the same kid who used to dream of being Hokage. You've earned the right to stand alongside the cage now." Naruto smiled a little, feeling a sense of comfort from Kakashi's words. But there was still that lingering doubt, about Sasuke, about the Akatsuki, about the future. "What if I can't stop Sasuke?" Naruto asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Kakashi sighed softly. "Sasuke's made his choices, and you'll have to make yours. But don't forget, Naruto, you've already changed the world just by being yourself. Whatever happens, you'll find a way." Naruto stared up at the night sky, the stars twinkling above. He wasn't sure what was going to happen at the Cage Summit, or how he would face Sasuke again. But one thing was clear, he would keep fighting for his friends, for his village, and for the future. And with the legacy of Kozuki Oden at his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The morning arrived quickly, and Naruto found himself standing before the gates of Konoha, ready for the journey to the Land of Iron. Tsunade had already given him a detailed briefing about the upcoming summit, but the weight of the situation still loomed heavily over him. The meeting of the Five Cage was not just about discussing the Akatsuki. It was a crucial opportunity to shape the future of the ninja world. Naruto stood at the edge of the village, his feet planted firmly in the dirt, and glanced down at the swords that rested on his back, Enma and Aim no Habakiri. The swords felt more natural in his hands now, as though they had become an extension of his very being. Enma with its power to elongate and twist, and Aim no Habakiri, a blade that glowed with the strength of Oden's will. He tightened his grip on the hilts, taking a deep breath. This summit would require more than just his battle prowess. He had to prove that he could handle the delicate balance of leadership, diplomacy, and strategy. He had to convince the other cage that they could trust him, and Konoha. "Naruto." Naruto turned at the sound of his name. It was Sakura, running up to him, her face still slightly flushed from the morning's rush. She was carrying a small pack and wore her usual ninja attire, ready for the long journey ahead. "You're not getting cold feet, are you?" she teased, her smile wide. Naruto chuckled, though he could feel his nerves under the surface. "No way. I'm just thinking." Sakura raised an eyebrow. "About what?" Naruto looked out at the village one last time, letting the familiar sights ground him. "About everything. This summit. Sasuke, the Akatsuki. I have a lot riding on this, and I don't know if I'm ready for everything it might bring." Sakura's face softened. "You've grown a lot, Naruto. More than you know. You're ready for this. Besides, we're all behind you. No matter what happens, we'll face it together." Naruto nodded. He felt a surge of gratitude toward her. Sakura had always been there, even in his most uncertain moments. They had been through so much together, and he couldn't imagine facing the future without her by his side. "I guess you're right," he said with a small grin. "All right. Let's go kick some Akatsuki butt." With that, the two of them joined Tsunade, Kakashi, and the rest of the group at the village gates. The journey to the Land of Iron would take several days. And Naruto knew that along the way, there would be time to reflect, prepare, and mentally prepare himself for the challenges ahead. The journey was uneventful, But Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that something important was about to unfold. As they neared the Land of Iron, the atmosphere became more tense. The neutral territory was surrounded by towering mountains and rugged terrain. And the meeting hall, the Iron Fortress, was nestled within a vast, empty plain, isolated from the rest of the world. The gates of the fortress loomed ahead, and Naruto could see the silhouettes of other shinobi gathered outside. Tsunade gave him one final glance as they approached. "Remember, Naruto," she said quietly, "this isn't just about your strength. You have to earn the trust of the other cage. And you have to show them that Konoha is ready to play a crucial role in the future of the 5 great nations." Naruto nodded firmly. "I understand, Granny. I'll do my best." They approached the massive iron gates, which creaked open as they arrived. Inside, Naruto could feel the weight of history hanging over them, as if every step had been taken before him by leaders who had forged the future of the ninja world. As they entered, he saw the other cage, Raikage, Tsuchikage, Mizukage, and the mysterious figure representing the Land of Wind, each standing in a corner of the room, their eyes scanning him curiously. The Raikage, a towering man with an intimidating presence, was the first to speak, his voice booming. "Naruto Uzumaki. You're the one who defeated Pain, right?" Naruto didn't flinch. "Yeah, that was me." The Raikage's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more. Beside him, the Tsuchikage, a short, stooped figure with a thick beard, grunted dismissively. "A kid? Huh? Don't make me laugh. The Akatsuki has been causing chaos for years. And now the brat's supposed to stop them?" Naruto's fists clenched at his sides. But before he could respond, Tsunade spoke up, her voice carrying an undeniable authority. "Watch your tongue, Onoki. Naruto may be young, but his actions have spoken louder than any of us could. He fought and won against Pain, a threat that even the strongest among us could not handle. You do well to show him respect." The room fell silent, the weight of Tsunade's words hanging in the air. Onoki glared, but there was a grudging respect in his gaze. The Mizukage, a woman with sharp eyes and a calculating look, was next to speak, her voice cool and composed. "We've all heard the rumors of the 9 tails. Naruto. The Akatsuki has its eyes on you, and they'll stop at nothing to get what they want. What's your plan to stop them?" Naruto's eyes narrowed. "My plan? To keep fighting. To protect my friends in the village. I'll deal with the Akatsuki, just like I dealt with Pain." The Mizukage's eyes flickered slightly, and she nodded, as if testing him. Bold words. But words alone won't stop an organization like the Akatsuki. Naruto straightened his back, his voice filled with determination. "Then I'll show you. Actions speak louder than words." There was a pause, and then the cage began to speak amongst themselves, discussing the situation at hand. Their voices were low but intense, and Naruto found himself listening intently, catching fragments of their conversation. "The Akatsuki won't stop unless we unite. The balance of power is shifting, Naruto's influence is growing. We can't afford to ignore the situation any longer." Naruto felt the weight of their words settle on his shoulders. The future of the world rested in the hands of these leaders. And despite the growing tensions, he knew that this summit could be a turning point. As the discussion continued, Naruto's thoughts drifted back to Oden's teachings, the legacy of Kozuki Oden, the power he had inherited, and the responsibility that came with it. He knew that to change the future, he couldn't just rely on strength. He had to prove that he could lead, inspire, and bring together people from all walks of life. After hours of deliberation, the cage turned their attention to Naruto once more. The Raikage stood, his gaze piercing. "We've discussed it, and we've decided. The Akatsuki is still a threat, and with Naruto's leadership, we may stand a chance against them. But the question remains, what role will Konoha play in all of this?" Tsunade looked toward Naruto, silently handing him the reins. Naruto took a deep breath. He could feel the weight of Oden's legacy burning within him. The will of the Kozuki clan. The desire to protect, to build a world where people could live in peace. This was his moment. "We'll stand together," Naruto said, his voice clear and unwavering. "Konoha will be a leader in this fight against the Akatsuki. But we can't do it alone. We'll need the help of all the villages. And we'll make sure that, no matter what happens, the next generation of ninja will grow up in a world that values peace over war." The room was silent for a long moment, the cage evaluating him. Finally, the Raikage spoke. "You have my respect, Uzumaki Naruto. Let's see what you can do." Naruto nodded firmly. This was just the beginning. But he knew one thing for sure. The future was in his hands, and he wouldn't let it slip away. The silence in the room after Naruto's declaration hung like a heavy fog. The cage regarded him with mixed expressions. Some skeptical, some impressed, but none openly hostile. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Something far beyond the battlefield. The future of the 5 great nations rested in their hands, and Naruto was now standing firmly among them as an equal. Even if only for a moment. The Raikage, ever the pragmatist, was the first to speak after the tense pause. His voice was calm, though there was still an edge to it. "We'll see how your resolve holds up when the Akatsuki makes their next move. They'll test you, mark my words." Naruto met his gaze without flinching. "I'm ready for them. And ready to prove that the 5 great shinobi nations can work together." Tsunade, standing beside him, nodded approvingly. "Exactly. We may not always agree, but the Akatsuki is a threat that affects us all. This summit is just the beginning. We must unite, or they'll pick us apart one by one." The Mizukage, who had remained silent until now, spoke up with a cool, calculated expression. "Unity is important. But how do you plan on convincing the other villages to set aside their grudges and personal interests? Especially the Land of Wind. They've been relatively quiet. But they won't stay neutral forever." Naruto's eyes narrowed. The Mizukage was right. The political landscape between the villages had always been tense, with alliances shifting like sand. The Akatsuki might have pushed the villages together for now, but the underlying animosities and rivalries still existed. "We'll show them," Naruto said, his voice steady. "We'll prove that we're stronger together. When the next battle comes, we fight as one, not as separate villages. That's the only way we'll stand a chance." "Well said," Tsunade remarked with a smile. "But it was brief. But this won't be easy. The Akatsuki will try to undermine us, to turn us against each other. We need a plan, a strategy." At that moment, the conversation shifted to the practicalities of their alliance. The cage, despite their differences, agreed on the need for a coordinated response to the Akatsuki's operations. Their discussions grew more technical, as they began outlining contingencies and organizing joint forces. Naruto's mind, however, wandered, reflecting on what had happened back in Konoha. The meeting with the cage had been a defining moment for him. But the path ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty. The Akatsuki was a constant threat, and Sasuke's involvement in the organization was the sword hanging over their heads. His thoughts returned to the mission of the Cage Summit. Their goal wasn't only to form alliances, it was to ensure that they could act swiftly if the Akatsuki made a move. But no one knew when the next assault would come. And with each passing moment, the tension only increased. Later that evening, as the cage took a break from the summit to prepare for their next round of discussions, Naruto found himself wandering the corridors of the Iron Fortress. The fortress, built into the side of a mountain, was a vast structure of stone and steel, its halls filled with echoes of history. Despite its imposing architecture, Naruto found a strange comfort in its solitude. It was here, in this isolated place, that the future would be shaped. Naruto walked to the edge of the fortress, where the wind blew fiercely, carrying with it the scent of the mountains and the distant ocean. The sky stretched above him, painted in hues of orange and purple as the sun began to set. He leaned against the stone wall, lost in thought. He wasn't alone for long. Couldn't sleep either. "Huh?" Naruto turned to see Sakura approaching, her face thoughtful. She had left the summit's discussions to take a moment of peace, just as he had. "I guess you could say that," Naruto replied, offering her a tired smile. "There's a lot on my mind." Sakura leaned against the wall beside him, her arms crossed. "I know. We're about to face something bigger than any of us have ever dealt with. But you're not alone in this. You've got all of us, your friends, your allies." Naruto nodded, though a small frown tugged at his lips. "I know. But sometimes it feels like there's more I need to do." More I need to figure out. Sakura glanced at him, sensing the weight of his thoughts. You've already done so much, Naruto. Don't forget that. You saved the village, changed the world, and now you're standing at the head of the summit. That's more than anyone ever thought you'd do. Naruto looked up at the sky, his mind still racing. But that's the thing. I'm not sure what comes next. I've got the strength. Yeah. But is that enough to change things for real? What if I can't keep up with the expectations of the cage? Or the villagers? What if the Akatsuki is too strong? Sakura placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice warm. You're not alone in this. You've never been alone, Naruto. We'll all be there with you. You don't have to carry the weight of the world by yourself. Naruto gave her a small, appreciative smile. Thanks, Sakura. I guess I just needed to hear that. Of course, she said with a grin. Now, let's get some rest. You'll need your energy for tomorrow. Naruto nodded, feeling lighter than he had in hours. As they turned to walk back into the fortress, his mind was still buzzing with the upcoming summit and what the future would hold. But for the first time in a long while, he felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The next day, the cage resumed their discussions, finalizing their plans and strategies. Naruto's role in these talks was crucial, not just because of his strength, but because of his growing understanding of leadership. His words had already started to leave an impression on the other cage, even if their skepticism remained. The day wore on, and as the sun dipped lower in the sky, the discussions began to shift from the immediate threat of the Akatsuki to a broader vision for the future. Tsunade, ever pragmatic, began to discuss the reintegration of the former rogue ninja, like Sasuke, into the fold. Their role was complicated, but it couldn't be ignored. The cage knew that there would be no lasting peace unless they dealt with the underlying fractures within their ranks. Naruto's heart sank at the mention of Sasuke's name again. Despite his resolve to move forward, the question of his old friend, now an enemy, lingered like an open wound. As the summit entered its final stages, Naruto felt the weight of the coming battle press heavily on his shoulders. The Akatsuki's next move was imminent, and no one knew how quickly things would escalate. But one thing was certain, the time for peace had passed, and the time for action was now. The cage had agreed to move forward together, pooling their resources to combat the Akatsuki threat. But what would it take to defeat them? And what role would Naruto play in this war? As the summit concluded, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. The cage summit was over, but Naruto's mind felt more restless than ever. The discussions had been productive, and an alliance of sorts had been forged. Though fragile and tentative, the five great nations, for the first time in years, were prepared to unite against a common enemy. But despite the progress, there was something unsettling about the way the summit had ended. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Naruto's shoulders. As the delegation prepared to leave the Land of Iron and return to their respective villages, the air was thick with a sense of urgency. The Akatsuki was still out there, and though they hadn't struck yet, everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the next attack came. Naruto stood on the edge of the fortress, looking out over the vast landscape below. The wind tousled his hair. But his thoughts were far away. Sakura, Tsunade, Kakashi, and the others had already boarded the transport to head back to Konoha. But Naruto lingered, needing just a moment alone. The words from the cage echoed in his mind, particularly the ones from the Raikage. We'll see how your resolve holds up when the Akatsuki makes their next move. Naruto clenched his fists. He had no doubt that the Akatsuki would strike soon. They had to be planning something, and Naruto couldn't afford to wait for them to make the first move. The stakes were too high now, especially with Sasuke still somewhere out there, tangled up in their twisted cause. Naruto's thoughts were interrupted by the faint sound of footsteps behind him. He turned, expecting to see one of his allies, but instead, it was someone else entirely. You're still here. It was the Mizukage, Maid Terumi. She approached slowly, her eyes narrowing as she took in Naruto's distant expression. Despite their differences in leadership style, there was an understanding between them now. She wasn't one to show weakness easily, but she could see that Naruto carried burdens far greater than anyone might have realized. Can't sleep either? She asked, her tone lighter than usual. Naruto gave a half-smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. I guess you could say that. I've been thinking a lot about what comes next. The Akatsuki won't wait forever. They're bound to strike soon. And when they do, it's not just Konoha that will be at risk. The entire world could fall into chaos if we're not prepared. Mei's expression softened. She stood beside him, looking out at the horizon. You're right. The Akatsuki are unlike any enemy we've ever faced. They know no loyalty, no mercy. But you're not alone in this fight, Naruto. The villages might have their differences, but when the time comes, we will stand together. Naruto nodded slowly. Mei's words were comforting, but the fear of what the Akatsuki might unleash was still there. The darkness of their ambitions had no limits, and there was no telling what horrors they might bring with them next. But even with all the villages together, I still don't know if it'll be enough, Naruto muttered, his voice strained. The Akatsuki are more powerful than we realize. And Sasuke, he's still out there, somewhere, connected to all of this. I don't know what to do about him. Mei looked at him with quiet understanding. Sasuke Uchiha, he's always been your greatest challenge, hasn't he? But you're not the same Naruto you were back then. You've grown stronger. Your resolve is unwavering, and you'll find a way to bring him back, one way or another. You always do. Naruto's gaze hardened at the mention of Sasuke. The path to bring Sasuke back had always been riddled with obstacles, but the stakes were now higher than ever. The Akatsuki had manipulated him, twisted his heart and mind until he had become their weapon. If Naruto was to stop the Akatsuki, he would have to find a way to reach Sasuke first. Mei's words had sparked something in him. Perhaps it wasn't just about defeating the Akatsuki or saving the villages. It was about saving his friend, saving the person who had once been his greatest rival. Sasuke had always been a mirror for Naruto, showing him what he could become if he lost his way. But there was still a part of Sasuke that was the brother he had once known. That part hadn't disappeared. It was buried deep, but it was still there. I'll bring him back, Naruto said with a renewed sense of conviction. Even if it means facing the Akatsuki head-on. I'll save him. I can't let him be swallowed up by darkness. Mei didn't reply immediately. She simply gave him a long, appraising look, as if weighing his words carefully. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the corridors of the fortress. Naruto stood there for a few moments longer, the weight of his vow pressing heavily on his heart. But he was resolute now. Sasuke was a crucial part of this fight, and he wasn't going to leave him behind. Not now. Not ever. The journey back to Konoha was long, and by the time Naruto arrived, the village was bustling with its usual activity. The Cage Summit had brought some relief, but the tension in the air was palpable. There was no way to shake the growing sense of unease. Upon arriving at Konoha, Naruto was immediately summoned to the Hokage's office. Tsunade was already there, looking over a pile of documents, her face grim. The rest of the team, Sakura, Kakashi, and others, were gathered around, their faces just as serious. We've received intel, Tsunade said, her tone sharp. The Akatsuki has begun moving. They've infiltrated multiple villages, and it seems they're preparing for something big. We don't know exactly what their plan is, but we need to act quickly. Naruto's heart skipped a beat. The time for waiting was over. The Akatsuki had made their move. How soon do we need to strike? Naruto asked, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. Tsunade looked at him, her expression firm. We'll need to coordinate with the other villages. We don't know where the Akatsuki will strike next, but we can't afford to be caught off guard. Your strength will be crucial in this fight, Naruto. You'll lead a team to scout their movements and neutralize any threats we can find. Naruto nodded. The pieces were falling into place, and it was time for action. No more second guessing. No more doubts. The battle was coming, and he would lead the charge. We'll stop them, Naruto said with unshakable confidence. We'll bring the Akatsuki down. Together. That night, as Naruto prepared for the mission ahead, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond the horizon. The Akatsuki's plans were starting to unfold, and the world was on the brink of another war. One that could change everything. But Naruto knew that whatever the Akatsuki had planned, they wouldn't succeed. Not while he was still standing. He had his friends, his allies, and his will. And that was more than enough. The next morning came quickly, and with it, a renewed sense of urgency. The streets of Konoha were filled with activity as the villagers went about their daily routines. But the atmosphere was tense. News of the Akatsuki's movements had spread like wildfire, and every shinobi in the village knew that the storm was coming. Naruto stood in the Hokage's office, alongside Tsunade, Kakashi, Sakura, and the rest of his trusted comrades. The air was thick with anticipation, each of them preparing for the mission that would set the tone for the war to come. Tsunade was the first to speak, her voice calm but unwavering. Naruto, you'll lead a small team to gather intelligence on the Akatsuki. We need to know their next move. We've intercepted reports from the Land of Rivers, and we suspect they're targeting a few key villages, including ours. Naruto nodded, his expression hardening. I'm ready. Who's coming with me? Kakashi stepped forward, his Sharingan already activated. I'll accompany you, Naruto. We'll need all the experience we can get on this mission. It's too dangerous for you to go alone. Sakura also stepped forward, her usual fiery determination in her eyes. I'm coming too. I'll be more useful out there than waiting here. Naruto turned to see Sai, the quiet, reserved member of Team 7, standing off to the side. He knew Sai would join them without hesitation. His loyalty as unwavering as ever. I'll provide reconnaissance from the air, Sai added, his expression unreadable but his tone steady. Tsunade surveyed them, nodding in approval. All right. The team is set. You'll leave immediately. Take every precaution. We don't know where the Akatsuki is hiding, but they're out there, and they're preparing for something big. With that, the mission was set into motion. Naruto's heart beat with purpose as he stood at the head of his team, each of them ready for whatever lay ahead. They were a small group, but they were strong, united in their purpose. They would gather intel, find the Akatsuki, and strike first before the organization could make their next move. The journey took them through dense forests and desolate plains. As they made their way toward the Land of Rivers, the region where the Akatsuki was rumored to be gathering, Naruto's mind was sharp, constantly on alert. The days of peaceful missions were over. This was war. Sakura walked beside him, her pace steady. Naruto, are you all right? She asked, her voice laced with concern. You've been unusually quiet since we left. Naruto glanced at her and forced a smile. I'm fine, Sakura. Just thinking. The Akatsuki is out there. And if they're planning something big, we need to stop it before it starts. Sakura nodded, her expression firm. We will. We've faced them before, and we'll face them again. Together. Kakashi, who had been walking silently beside them, chimed in. Naruto's right. Though, we need to be prepared for anything. The Akatsuki is dangerous, and they've only grown stronger over the years. Sai, hovering just above them with his bird-like jutsu, spoke from above. I've been keeping an eye on the landscape. No signs of the Akatsuki yet, but I've spotted several unusual energy signatures to the south. Naruto's attention sharpened. Are they moving? Sai didn't hesitate. Yes. It seems they've divided their forces. They could be planning a coordinated attack. Naruto's gut twisted. This was exactly what he feared. A multi-pronged assault. The Akatsuki wouldn't be content with simple raids. They would hit hard and fast, trying to destabilize the entire continent. Let's go, Naruto ordered, his voice filled with urgency. We need to intercept them before they make their move. They quickened their pace, pushing through the terrain with the speed and precision that only a team like theirs could manage. Hours passed in tense silence, but there was no sign of the Akatsuki. Finally, they reached the outskirts of a small village at dusk. The village was eerily quiet. The sounds of daily life absent. Naruto's senses went on high alert. This doesn't feel right, Sakura murmured, her eyes scanning the area. There should be people here. Sai nodded. I don't like it. Something's off. Naruto, ever the leader, took charge. We'll split up. Kakashi, you and I will take the main road. Sakura, Sai, scout the surrounding areas. Stay in contact. If you find anything, let us know immediately. The team dispersed, moving with careful precision. Naruto's senses were stretched to their limit, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down on him. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. As they moved deeper into the village, Naruto's instincts kicked in. Something was definitely wrong. A chill ran down his spine as he heard the faintest sound, like whispers carried on the wind. It's a trap. Naruto's eyes narrowed. His mind raced as he signaled to Kakashi, and the two of them moved in closer to the village center. They stepped cautiously through the alleyways, and just as they neared the village square, the trap sprang. From the shadows, several figures emerged, cloaked in the distinctive black robes with red clouds, the unmistakable insignia of the Akatsuki. Naruto's heart skipped a beat. "Naruto Uzumaki." A voice rang out, deep and menacing. "We've been waiting for you." Naruto's eyes locked onto the leader of the group, a tall figure with long black hair and a cold, calculating gaze. One of the last remaining Akatsuki members. "You're too late," the figure continued, stepping forward. "The village is already under our control." Naruto's fists clenched, his resolve hardening. Not for long. Without another word, Naruto surged forward, his chakra flaring as he drew upon the immense power of his new abilities. The leader of the Akatsuki made a motion, and the other members of the organization stepped into position, their weapons at the ready. The battle was about to begin. Sakura and Sai arrived just in time to see Naruto and Kakashi charge into battle. Sakura's eyes flashed with determination. "We'll back them up," she shouted. Sai took to the air once more, using his ink jutsu to create massive birds and formations that circled above the battlefield. He launched projectiles to confuse the Akatsuki, while Sakura bolted forward, her fists glowing with chakra-infused power. The Akatsuki leader smirked. "You think you can stop us? We are already one step ahead of you." Naruto, however, wasn't deterred. "Then we'll just have to prove you wrong." The battle erupted in a flurry of movement and attacks. Naruto fought with the force of a storm, his Rasengan crackling with energy as he faced down the leader. Meanwhile, Kakashi was a blur, using his Sharingan to read his opponent's moves and countering them with precision. But the Akatsuki members were no slouches. Each one had a deadly skill at their disposal, and the battle was quickly turning into a test of endurance and strategy. Naruto's mind raced. He needed to end this quickly before they could call for reinforcements. With a fierce shout, he activated his power. The energy coursing through his body seemed to swell, his chakras shifting and becoming something more. Something divine. The weight of his destiny pressed down on him, and with a roar, he unleashed an attack that tore through the battlefield. The Akatsuki members faltered for a moment, their eyes widening in shock. "This isn't over," the leader spat, his tone venomous. But even he knew, this fight was far from finished. Naruto's resolve, however, was unshakable. He would not lose. Not this time. The battlefield crackled with the intensity of Naruto's newfound power. His Rasengan, infused with the raw energy of his growing strength, blasted through the Akatsuki's defenses, pushing them back in a wave of destructive force. But as the smoke cleared and the dust settled, the battle was far from over. The leader of the Akatsuki, who had yet to reveal his name, was the first to recover, his eyes narrowing as he observed Naruto. The other members of the organization stood at the ready, their eyes glowing with dangerous intent. "Impressive," the leader said, his voice cold but not devoid of respect. "You've grown much stronger since our last encounter. But you won't stop us. This is bigger than you. Bigger than your village." Naruto's eyes flicked between the remaining Akatsuki members. He could feel the power of his own chakra still surging inside him, the strength of the abilities he had yet to fully understand. It was like a well of untapped potential that he could barely contain, much less control. His mind raced. What was this new power? It wasn't just his training as a shinobi. It was something ancient. Something more. Kakashi, sensing Naruto's internal struggle, moved to his side. "Naruto, stay focused. They want you to lose control. Don't let them bait you." Naruto nodded. But it was clear that his mind was elsewhere. He had to be careful. His powers were growing, and with them, the weight of his responsibility. He couldn't afford to let that strength overwhelm him. Sakura stepped forward, her fists glowing with chakra as she prepared to take on the Akatsuki members who flanked their leader. "We're not backing down," she declared, voice full of resolve. "This village is our home. We protect it with everything we have." The Akatsuki leader sneered. "Pathetic." He waved his hand, and the other members began to move in a coordinated attack, each of them utilizing their unique abilities. Suddenly, Naruto felt a ripple in the air. His body instinctively reacted. His senses heightened as if some deeper part of him had awakened. His eyes locked onto the figure of the Akatsuki leader, and for a brief moment, it felt as though time itself had frozen. The atmosphere around him vibrated with energy, like a storm about to break loose. Naruto's body surged forward with a speed he hadn't consciously intended. His movements were fluid, almost instinctual, as he barreled toward the leader. The Rasengan in his hand shimmered with an ethereal glow, unlike anything he had ever felt before. The leader's eyes widened, but he didn't back down. He raised his hand, summoning a dark chakra that radiated malice. The ground beneath them cracked as their powers collided in an explosion of energy that sent shockwaves through the air. "Impressive," the leader muttered, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But your strength is still not enough to defeat us." Naruto's resolve hardened. "I won't stop until you're all defeated." Sakura leapt into the fray, her chakra-infused punches landing with incredible force as she took on one of the Akatsuki members. Kakashi was close behind, using his Sharingan to read the movements of the remaining members and countering their attacks with precision. Sai continued his aerial assault, creating massive ink creatures to bombard their enemies from above. "Naruto, we're clearing the path for you. Go." Naruto's eyes narrowed as he surged forward, focusing all of his energy into the Rasengan. The Akatsuki leader's eyes flicked to the incoming attack, but his expression remained calm, calculating. He raised his hand, preparing to counter. But then something unexpected happened. A surge of chakra, unlike anything Naruto had ever felt before, roared to life inside him. It was as though a hidden power had been unlocked, an ancient energy that coursed through him, urging him to act. The sensation was overwhelming, but not in a way that made him lose control. Instead, it sharpened his focus. His body burned with the intensity of it, and without thinking, Naruto called upon the power that had awakened deep within him. "Rasengan! Shippuden!" he shouted. The attack exploded with an overwhelming force. The leader's dark chakra couldn't match the raw power Naruto had unleashed. The Rasengan tore through the Akatsuki leader's defenses, shattering the ground beneath them. The leader was sent flying backward, his body crashing into a nearby building with a deafening crash. Naruto stood, panting, his body trembling from the exertion. The raw power that surged through him was intoxicating, and for a moment, he felt invincible. But he couldn't let himself be distracted. The battle was far from over. The Akatsuki leader slowly stood, blood dripping from his lips. His eyes flicked to Naruto with a mixture of surprise and fury. You shouldn't have done that," the leader hissed. "You just unleashed something you don't understand. The power you're wielding." But before he could finish, Naruto was already on him. His eyes burned with determination, and his movements were faster than ever before. The Akatsuki leader attempted to summon more dark chakra, but Naruto was already in front of him, his hand clasping around the leader's throat. "You're not going anywhere," Naruto growled. But then, a sharp voice rang out from behind him. "Naruto! Watch out!" Naruto's instincts kicked in just as an enormous blast of chakra rocketed toward him. He barely managed to dodge, but the shockwave still sent him flying, crashing into a nearby building. The impact left him dazed, his body bruised but not broken. Sakura and Kakashi were already on the move, protecting him from the incoming attack. But the Akatsuki leader was not alone. Two other members had stepped into the fray, each of them wielding dark powers that seemed to distort the air around them. The battle raged on, but Naruto's thoughts were a whirlwind. The power he had unlocked was something far beyond what he could have imagined. It was as though his own spirit had been unlocked, a hidden force that had been dormant within him for years. Was this the true extent of his potential? And if it was, could he control it? The night wore on, and the battle continued, with each side pushing harder than ever. But despite the chaos, Naruto found his focus. His mind sharpened. His senses tuned to the smallest movements. He could feel the flow of chakra in the air. The very rhythm of the fight. As the sun began to rise, Naruto knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The Akatsuki's plans were only unfolding. And he had to be ready. The power he had tapped into was a gift. But also a curse. It was more than just chakra. It was something deeper. Something that tied him to a history he had yet to understand. And the Akatsuki? They had just shown their hand. Naruto's resolve was stronger than ever. He would fight. He would protect. And above all, he would never back down. The true battle had only just begun. The morning sun cast a faint glow over the battlefield. The wreckage of the previous night's clash still smoldering. The air was thick with the smell of burnt wood and scorched earth. Remnants of the destructive force unleashed by both Naruto and the Akatsuki. The silence that followed the battle was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind. Naruto stood amid the destruction, breathing heavily, his eyes flickering with a mix of exhaustion and determination. His body felt drained, though the overwhelming surge of power still hummed beneath his skin like a volatile storm waiting to erupt. The transformation, the energy he had tapped into, it felt alien yet familiar, as if it had always been a part of him, waiting for the right moment to awaken. His team gathered around him. Kakashi was leaning against a nearby wall, his face slightly bruised from a blow earlier in the battle. But he was still standing strong. Sakura, though winded, had a fire in her eyes. Her resolve as unshakable as ever. Sai stood a few steps back, observing the surroundings, his expression unreadable. "You alright, Naruto?" Sakura asked, her voice laced with concern. Naruto nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just, I don't know what happened. That power, I've never felt anything like it." Kakashi straightened, his Sharingan eyes still glowing with residual chakra from the fight. "That wasn't just raw chakra, Naruto. What you did, it wasn't just an upgrade of your Rasengan. That was something else entirely." "I felt it too," Sai said, his tone calm but thoughtful. "That burst of energy, it wasn't just physical strength. It was as if the chakra itself was alive, infused with a purpose." Naruto shook his head, trying to clear the fog of uncertainty in his mind. "I don't get it. I didn't know I could even do that. It's like something just unlocked inside me. I didn't think." "That's the problem," Kakashi interrupted, his voice serious. "You didn't think. You reacted. You acted on instinct. And that's dangerous. Especially with that kind of power." Naruto's heart sank. He had always prided himself on being a reactive fighter, quick, impulsive, and powerful. But now, the implications of his actions weighed heavily on him. That surge of energy had come from somewhere deep inside him. It had felt natural, yet terrifying. "I know," Naruto said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of his newfound responsibility. "I'll learn to control it. I have to." Sakura stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You will, Naruto. We'll help you. We've always had your back." Naruto looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude for the support of his friends. But as he turned to survey the battlefield again, his mind went back to the words of the Akatsuki leader. "You've unleashed something you don't understand." What did he mean by that? Was there more to this power than just chakra? A loud crash interrupted his thoughts. The Akatsuki leader had managed to stand up, his clothes torn and bloodied, but his expression was one of undeterred hatred. "I told you," the leader hissed, his eyes blazing with fury. "You don't know what you're dealing with. That power, it doesn't belong to you. You're just a puppet. A vessel for something far darker." Naruto's heart skipped a beat. He took a step forward, fists clenched, ready to finish what he had started. But Kakashi placed a hand on his shoulder, stopping him. "Naruto, wait. Something's not right here. This isn't just about fighting. There's more to this than we know." The Akatsuki leader smirked. "You're a fool if you think you understand anything about this. The power you've just tapped into, it's not just your own. It's part of something ancient. Something that has been passed down for generations." Naruto's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" The leader's eyes glinted with a dark amusement. "You're the one who unleashed it. You're the one who awoke it. The power of Kozuki Oden. The name struck Naruto like a bolt of lightning. Kozuki Oden? The name felt like it came from the depths of history itself. Something that didn't belong to his world but to a distant past. His mind raced. But before he could respond, the Akatsuki leader let out a low, mocking laugh. You think you've unlocked just a fraction of your power? What you've done is only the beginning. There's so much more within you. Naruto Uzumaki. The bloodline. The will. The legacy of Kozuki Oden is inside you. And you're not the only one after it. Naruto's heart pounded in his chest. Kozuki Oden? Was that the source of the power he had just tapped into? But what did that mean for him? How could he be connected to someone like Oden? A legendary figure from another world? The Akatsuki leader stepped back. A strange aura of anticipation in the air. But enough talk. You'll see soon enough what happens when that power is truly unleashed. The leader raised his hand. And suddenly the remaining Akatsuki members stepped forward. Naruto instinctively dropped into a fighting stance. But a wave of nausea suddenly washed over him. It was as if the ground beneath him was shifting. The air growing thicker with an unseen energy. A crackling sound echoed in the distance. Then, a deep rumble. The earth trembled. Naruto's eyes widened as a massive, dark figure emerged from the ground. The result of the Akatsuki's jutsu. It was a giant, monstrous creature made of pure darkness. With glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of the world. The creature let out a deafening roar that shook the earth, sending ripples of chakra through the battlefield. It was like a living nightmare, huge, powerful, and full of malice. This is our final move, the Akatsuki leader said, his voice steady but filled with dark amusement. You've awakened something inside you, Naruto. But we've already awakened something much greater. Naruto's heart raced. He could feel the immense chakra emanating from the creature. But there was no time to hesitate. The Akatsuki were no longer just a group of rogue shinobi. They were manipulating forces beyond anything Naruto had ever faced. But what really gnawed at him was the question that the Akatsuki leader had raised. What was this legacy of Kozuki Oden? And how could it be connected to him? The creature's eyes locked onto Naruto. And its roar reverberated through his bones. Naruto. Kakashi called out. Focus. We can't let this thing tear the village apart. Naruto gritted his teeth. The Akatsuki wanted to test his power? Fine. He would give them a fight they would never forget. With a roar, Naruto charged forward. The power inside him swelling like a tidal wave. The creature lunged. Its massive claws reaching down to crush him. But Naruto was faster. In a flash, he slammed his hand to the ground, summoning the power of his Rasengan once more. Rasengan. Vortex. He shouted, and the attack expanded, turning into a massive, spiraling force of energy. The two forces collided with an explosion that rocked the landscape. The battle had only just begun. The battlefield erupted into chaos as the monstrous creature clashed with Naruto's newly enhanced Rasengan. The sheer power of the attack sent shockwaves through the air, causing the ground beneath them to crack and shatter. For a moment, it seemed as if time itself had frozen. Naruto, his Rasengan glowing with an intense, unearthly light, and the creature, its dark chakra swirling, ready to crush him. The two forces met in a cataclysmic explosion, scattering debris and dust into the air, filling the space with a blinding light. Naruto's body was thrown back from the impact, but his resolve remained unshaken. He landed on the ground, skidding to a halt, his chakra flaring around him as he quickly regained his footing. His eyes, though filled with the intensity of battle, betrayed a flicker of confusion. That surge of power inside him, the force that had overwhelmed the Akatsuki leader and now propelled his Rasengan to new heights, was unlike anything he had experienced before. Is this the power of Kozuki Oden? Naruto thought, his breath heavy, his mind racing. What does this all mean for me? The creature, still standing, snarled in fury. Its red eyes gleamed as it pushed forward, unfazed by the full force of the Rasengan. Its massive limbs cracked the earth with every step it took, and it howled in anger, its dark energy seeping into the surrounding area. Is this really all you've got, Naruto Uzumaki? The Akatsuki leader's voice cut through the air, cruel and mocking. You've barely scratched the surface of the power that's coursing through you. That beast is just a distraction. A tool to test your resolve. Naruto clenched his fists. A test? The idea enraged him. He was no one's test subject. He had fought his whole life to protect his friends, his village. And now he was being used as a pawn in some twisted game. I don't need your games, Naruto growled, his voice dripping with determination. I'll defeat this thing and all of you. Kakashi, who had been regaining his breath after the blast, looked up at Naruto with concern. Naruto, that power, you need to be careful. You're tapping into something you don't fully understand yet. If you lose control, I won't. Naruto interrupted, his eyes hardening. I won't let it control me. I can do this. I will do this. Kakashi didn't argue further. He knew better than anyone the strength Naruto possessed. But even Kakashi couldn't ignore the dangerous edge that now lingered in Naruto's voice. Something was changing in him. And it wasn't just his powers. The massive creature roared again, charging at Naruto with terrifying speed. Its claws, each as large as a tree, swiped at him. But Naruto dodged effortlessly, his enhanced senses allowing him to stay one step ahead. He could feel it, the power inside him, like a burning forge, urging him to push further, to go beyond what was possible. He closed his eyes for a split second, centering himself. He had always been an unpredictable fighter, relying on his instincts and his willpower to see him through. But this was different. He could feel something deeper, an ancient strength awakening, something that resonated with the very core of his being. Focus, he told himself. Control it. When his eyes snapped open, the difference was palpable. The raw chakra that had once surged uncontrollably now felt purposeful. It was like a river flowing through him, not chaotic and wild, but steady, powerful, and unyielding. With a defiant yell, Naruto surged forward, his body moving faster than he ever thought possible. His Rasengan flared to life again, this time with an aura of golden light, more intense, more alive than before. The air around him vibrated, and even the ground beneath his feet trembled as he approached the creature. Rasengan! Naruto shouted, his hand crackling with energy as he slammed the attack into the beast's chest. The force of the blow created an explosion of light and sound, the creature's massive body recoiling as the attack tore through its defenses. The beast howled in pain, but it wasn't enough to stop it. The Akatsuki leader's voice rang out once again. You think that'll stop it? You think that'll stop us? Naruto's eyes narrowed. I won't stop until you're all gone. Before the creature could recover, Naruto's hand shot forward, and with a flash of light, the Rasengan grew even larger, more concentrated. He had to end this now. He could feel the beast's immense chakra pushing back against him, trying to overwhelm his own power. This time, I'll make it count. As his Rasengan grew to an enormous size, Naruto's mind went back to the teachings of the past, of his master Jiraiya, of his mentor Kakashi, and the lessons he'd learned from his friends. They had all fought beside him, and they had all taught him the true meaning of strength. Strength wasn't just about raw power. It was about the people you fought for, the bonds you held dear. The Rasengan roared with energy as it slammed into the creature once more. The impact was so intense that the earth shook, and the creature let out a guttural scream of pain before it disintegrated into nothingness. The dark chakra that had once surrounded it dissipated, leaving only silence in its wake. Naruto stood in the middle of the battlefield, panting heavily, the remnants of the blast still swirling around him. The power inside him began to settle, but the adrenaline was still coursing through his veins. He turned toward the Akatsuki leader, his expression one of determination. Is that all you've got? Naruto's voice was low and steady, carrying the weight of everything he had just unleashed. The Akatsuki leader, despite the defeat of his creature, remained unfazed. You think you've won? Naruto Uzumaki? You've only awakened a fraction of the true power that lies within you. You have no idea what you're truly capable of. Naruto's brow furrowed. I don't care about what you think I can do. I'm doing this for my village, for my friends. A cold, knowing smile spread across the Akatsuki leader's face. Then you'll be disappointed when you realize just how deep this goes. Kozuki Oden's blood runs through your veins. Naruto. And with it comes a legacy that has far-reaching consequences. You're not just a hero. You're a weapon. A tool in a much larger game. Naruto's heart skipped a beat. Kozuki Oden's blood? Before he could respond, the leader gave a final, mocking bow. This isn't over, Uzumaki. It has only just begun. With that, the Akatsuki leader vanished, leaving the remaining members to retreat. The silence that followed was deafening, and Naruto's mind raced with the weight of the leader's words. Kozuki Oden's blood? What did that mean for him? Why was he connected to this legendary figure? Was his awakening of power a mere coincidence? Or was it part of something much larger, something beyond even his comprehension? The storm within him began to calm, but the questions remained. And Naruto knew, deep down, that the answers he sought were far from over. This battle was only the beginning. The truth about his legacy, and the power he had unlocked, was something he would have to confront. And soon, as his teammates gathered around him, Kakashi's voice broke through the silence. Naruto, he said, his tone serious. We need to talk. This is far bigger than just the Akatsuki. There's something we don't understand. Something important about what you've awakened. Naruto nodded, his resolve hardening. I know. And I'll get to the bottom of it. The path ahead was unclear. But one thing was certain. Whatever lay ahead, Naruto would face it with everything he had. For his village. For his friends. For his future. The battlefield was eerily quiet as the dust from the battle began to settle. The wind had picked up, stirring the remains of the scorched earth. The distant sounds of birds and insects returned, though there was a palpable tension in the air, a reminder of the monstrous creature that had just been defeated and the eerie warning left by the Akatsuki leader. Naruto stood at the center of it all, the golden glow of his chakras slowly fading as his Rasengan-powered strength subsided. His breaths were still heavy, but his heart raced for another reason entirely. What was Kozuki Oden's blood? Kakashi, Sai, and Sakura approached him cautiously, their expressions a mixture of concern and confusion. Though the immediate threat had been neutralized, the strange, cryptic words of the Akatsuki leader hung heavily in the air. Naruto, we need to talk, Kakashi said, his usual calm demeanor now tinged with something else. Anxiety. Perhaps. What happened today isn't just about the battle. It's about what you've unlocked. This power, it's connected to something we don't understand. Naruto's gaze hardened. I know. But what I do know is that I have to control it. Whatever this is. I can't let it control me. Sakura stepped forward, her hand gently resting on his arm. Naruto. Whatever it is. You'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But we need to be careful. If it's something connected to Kozuki Oden, we're dealing with forces beyond our usual understanding. Sai, who had been observing the conversation from the sidelines, added. The Akatsuki leader mentioned something about a legacy. Kozuki Oden's bloodline. That's something we need to investigate. But how is that connected to you? Naruto's fists clenched, frustration bubbling inside him. He wasn't used to feeling this way, uncertain, out of control. But he also knew that there was no turning back. This power, whatever it was, had awakened inside him. And he couldn't ignore it. If there was a legacy tied to his bloodline, then he needed to understand it before it was too late. Let's figure it out, Naruto said, his voice more determined than ever. We need to go back to the village. I need to talk to the Hokage. Maybe they'll know something about this bloodline. And if there's more to it, I have to be ready for it. With a final glance at the battlefield, Naruto began walking toward the village. His steps were heavy with thought. But there was no turning back. He had unlocked something he didn't fully understand. And the truth was calling to him, like a distant echo. Back at the Hidden Leaf village, the sun had dipped below the horizon by the time Naruto and his team arrived at the village gates. The streets were quieter than usual, the villagers having retreated to their homes after hearing about the battle and the Akatsuki's brief invasion. There were still rumors circulating about what had transpired. But Naruto didn't have time to worry about that. What he needed now was answers. As they entered the Hokage's office, Naruto could sense the weight of the situation. Tsunade, the Hokage, was already waiting for them. Her expression grim. Her eyes were tired. A sign that she had been up for hours dealing with the aftermath of the battle. But they also held a sharp intelligence, one that never missed a beat. Naruto. Tsunade greeted him. Her voice serious. You've returned. But we have much to discuss. Naruto nodded, his face hardening. Tsunade. I need to know everything you know about Kozuki Oden. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Kozuki Oden? Where did you hear that name? From the Akatsuki leader, Naruto said, his voice tinged with frustration. He said something about my bloodline being connected to Oden's legacy. What does that mean? What does it have to do with me? The room fell silent for a moment. Tsunade's gaze grew intense, her mind racing. She glanced at Kakashi and the others before turning back to Naruto. Kozuki Oden was a legendary samurai from a different world. Tsunade began, her voice low and steady. A man with extraordinary strength, capable of wielding the power of the Oden blade, a weapon said to have been forged by the gods. He was known for his unmatched swordsmanship and his unwavering loyalty to his people. But there's more to the story, something that even I don't fully understand. Naruto's heart skipped a beat. A samurai? You see, Tsunade continued, Kozuki Oden's bloodline is steeped in mystery. There were rumors that his descendants could inherit his powers. But no one knew if the bloodline still existed. It said that those with Oden's blood possess a connection to an ancient, divine power. One that can change the very fabric of reality. Naruto's mind whirled as he absorbed the information. Wait! Are you saying that I… Yes. Naruto. Tsunade interrupted, her eyes narrowing in thought. The Akatsuki leader's words were not without merit. The power you've unlocked, it is tied to Kozuki Oden's legacy. But how and why it's within you? That's something we don't fully understand. But how? Naruto asked, his voice filled with disbelief. I'm from the Hidden Leaf Village. I don't have any samurai blood. How could this be possible? Kakashi spoke up, his tone measured. We've seen you unlock new abilities before. Naruto, chakra control, strength, speed. But this is different. This power, what you tapped into, it's not just about chakra. It's deeper than that. It's something primal. Something ancient. Sai, ever the observer, added, it's as if your chakra has become a conduit for something larger. The Akatsuki leader mentioned that it was a test. That you've only unlocked a fraction of your power. And we need to understand it before it becomes uncontrollable. Tsunade leaned forward, her eyes serious. Naruto, you need to train. You need to learn to control this power before it consumes you. I suggest you seek out someone who can help you with this. Someone who has experience with ancient, divine powers. Naruto's gaze hardened. He had faced many challenges in his life. But this was different. He wasn't just fighting for the village anymore. He was fighting for his very identity. I will, Naruto said, determination in his voice. I'll find a way to control it. And I'll uncover the truth about this power. About my legacy. Tsunade nodded. We'll be here to help you, Naruto. But you're not alone in this. We've always had your back. A few days later, Naruto sat alone on the roof of the Hokage's office, the wind tousling his hair as he stared out over the village. The weight of everything that had happened felt heavier than ever. His mind kept drifting back to the Akatsuki leader's words. The mention of his bloodline. Could he really be connected to Kozuki Oden? A man from another world? And what did it mean for his future? He closed his eyes, focusing on the pulse of energy within him. The power he had awakened felt like a fire, intense, burning, but untamed. He had to learn to control it, or it would consume him. But how? Who could teach him? A familiar voice broke his thoughts. You seem lost in thought, Kakashi said, stepping onto the roof beside him. Naruto smiled faintly. Just thinking about everything. I don't know where to go from here. Kakashi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. You don't have to figure everything out right away. Sometimes, the path reveals itself when the time is right. Just remember, you've always had the strength to overcome whatever comes your way. Naruto nodded, feeling a sense of comfort in his mentor's words. He wasn't alone in this. And whatever the future held, he would face it head on. Days passed in the Hidden Leaf Village, and the weight of Naruto's newfound power hung heavily on his shoulders. Despite his usual optimism, the realization that he was connected to the legendary Kozuki Oden, someone with a divine, almost mythical legacy, was difficult to process. It wasn't just the power that troubled him. It was the responsibility that came with it. Naruto had always fought for his friends, for his village, and for his ideals. But now, with the promise of an untapped power inside him, one that could alter the course of the world, it felt as if his very existence was on the brink of something far greater. Something that might take him down a path from which there was no return. The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Kakashi appeared beside him, leaning against the edge of the rooftop. Thinking about it again? Kakashi asked, his tone neutral but with a hint of concern. Naruto didn't reply immediately. He didn't need to. Kakashi knew him well enough to understand that his silence was just as telling as his words. I don't know what to do, Kakashi, Naruto confessed, his voice quieter than usual. I'm not sure I can control this power. I don't even know if I should control it. Kakashi's gaze softened. You don't have to figure it all out right away. You've come a long way since the beginning. Since you were just a kid with a dream. You'll figure this out too. Naruto smiled faintly. But the doubt still lingered in his heart. He had always been a fighter. His battles had always been against visible enemies. Tangible threats. But this? This was something different. This was a war within himself. The next morning, Tsunade summoned Naruto, Kakashi, and Sakura to the Hokage's office. There was an air of urgency in her voice when she spoke. Naruto, she began, after a long pause, I've made arrangements for you to train with someone who might be able to help you understand and control the power within you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Who? Tsunade stepped forward, handing him a scroll. His name is Ryuko. He's a wandering sage, an expert in controlling and awakening dormant powers. I've known him for a long time. He may not have direct knowledge of Kozuki Oden's bloodline, but he specializes in guiding individuals like you. Those with inherited abilities from ancient lineages. Naruto looked down at the scroll in his hands. The name, Ryuko, meant nothing to him, but he could feel the weight of Tsunade's seriousness behind it. This was important, and it was his only chance to gain control over the power that had awakened within him. When do we leave? Naruto asked, determination rising within him. Soon. He's waiting for you in the Forest of the Forgotten. Tsunade answered, her expression grim. It's a secluded place. One where those seeking knowledge or power go to meditate and train. But be careful, Naruto. This journey is dangerous. The power you're tapping into is not something to be trifled with. Naruto nodded, accepting the gravity of the situation. I'll be careful. The journey to the Forest of the Forgotten. The journey to the Forest of the Forgotten took several days, and along the way, Naruto could feel his thoughts becoming increasingly clouded. Every time he focused on the power inside him, a strange, unfamiliar sensation would surge in his chest. It felt like fire. It felt like it was calling to him, pushing him, urging him to wield it without hesitation. At night, he would wake up in a cold sweat, feeling as if the power was just beyond his control, like a beast waiting to be unleashed. The fear of losing control gnawed at him, but he buried it deep, not allowing it to show on the outside. He had to remain strong. Sakura and Kakashi accompanied him, as always, offering words of encouragement and guidance along the way. Despite his quiet moments of self-doubt, Naruto found strength in their presence. He wasn't alone. They had always been there for him, and they would be there for him now, no matter what. On the fourth night of their journey, the forest came into view. It was a vast, dense expanse of trees, their trunks twisted and covered in ancient moss. The air was thick with the scent of earth and mystery, and the silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves or distant cries of animals. This is it, Kakashi said, his eyes scanning the surroundings. The Forest of the Forgotten. I've heard rumors that this place has a strange, almost magical quality. It's said that many who enter come back changed. Naruto's heart raced. He knew this would be a turning point, but he wasn't sure whether it would be for the better or for the worse. He had already been changed by the power inside him. Would this place change him even more? As they ventured deeper into the forest, they came to a clearing. In the center stood an old man, his long white hair flowing in the breeze, his robes worn but immaculate. His eyes were closed in deep meditation. his posture serene and focused. There was something ancient about him, an aura that seemed to transcend time itself. "Ryuko," Tsunade had said. "He's waiting for you." Naruto stepped forward, his footsteps tentative at first, unsure of what to expect. The old man's presence felt overwhelming, as if he could see right through Naruto, into the very core of his soul. "Ah, the boy with the blood of Oden." Ryuko's voice was soft, yet filled with power. He opened his eyes slowly, and Naruto felt a chill run down his spine. The eyes before him weren't just those of an old man. They were the eyes of someone who had seen centuries pass, someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. "I've been waiting for you," Ryuko said, his voice calm but knowing. "Come closer." "Naruto Uzumaki. I sense the power within you. It's a gift, and a curse." Naruto stepped forward, the words weighing on his mind. "What is this power? Why'd I have it? Why me?" Ryuko gestured to the ground before him, motioning for Naruto to sit. "Sit with me, child. You must first understand the nature of the power before you can wield it." Naruto hesitated but then sat cross-legged in front of the sage, his heart pounding. As he sat in silence, Ryuko's voice broke the stillness again. "Your bloodline, Naruto, is more than just an inheritance. It is a legacy. The blood of Kozuki Oden runs through your veins, and with it comes not just the power of a great warrior, but the responsibility of the past. Oden's swordsmanship, his unshakable will, and the fire that burned within him. They are all within you now." Naruto's eyes widened. "But why me? I'm just me. I'm not some legendary warrior." Ryuko smiled gently. "You're the one chosen by fate. The bloodline flows through you because you are the one who can carry its weight. But you must not forget the cost. Power like this demands discipline, sacrifice, and control. Oden was great, but he lost everything because he could not control his power. Do you understand the burden that comes with this?" Naruto nodded slowly, the weight of Ryuko's words settling deep into his heart. This wasn't just about gaining strength. It was about carrying a legacy, one that would test him in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. "I understand," Naruto said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'll learn to control it. I won't let it control me." Ryuko's eyes softened. "Good. But remember, Naruto, even the greatest warriors have their limits. Never forget that the greatest strength lies not in power, but in restraint." As the night deepened and the stars above glittered like distant promises, Naruto knew this was just the beginning of his journey. The path would be difficult, but for the first time, he felt a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could master the power within him. And with that hope came the realization that he wasn't just fighting for his own future. He was fighting for the legacy of Kozuki Oden, for the future of his village, and for the very world that depended on him. The days that followed Naruto's meeting with Ryuko were filled with intense, grueling training. The sage's lessons were not only physical but spiritual, guiding Naruto through a deeper understanding of the power within him. Unlike any training he had experienced before, these lessons tested his will, his mind, and his very essence. The forest around them seemed to pulse with an ancient energy, as if the land itself had witnessed countless generations of warriors struggle with power like his. Ryuko was not an ordinary teacher. He was a sage who had spent lifetimes meditating on the balance of strength and restraint. He had seen warriors rise and fall, their power unchecked, consumed by their own ambitions or desires. And it was this wisdom that he now imparted to Naruto. Lesson 1. Understanding the power. Ryuko had taken Naruto to a secluded area deep within the Forest of the Forgotten. The air here was thick with a mysterious fog, the kind that clouded the mind and made even the most experienced shinobi cautious. It was the perfect place for meditation, Ryuko had said. "Close your eyes, Naruto," Ryuko instructed, his voice calm but commanding. Naruto obeyed, sitting cross-legged as he had done countless times before. But this time, he wasn't meditating simply to clear his mind. This time, he was confronting something far greater, the power of Kozuki Oden that flowed through his veins. "I want you to feel it," Ryuko's voice echoed in the quiet forest. "Feel the fire that lies within you. The same fire that burned within Oden. Don't try to control it. Let it come to you." At first, nothing happened. The air was still, the fog unyielding. But then, slowly, a warmth began to rise from deep within Naruto. It wasn't the warmth of a simple chakra flow. It was something much more primal, like the fire of a forge. He could feel it swirling inside him. This immense power, coiling like a beast ready to break free. The feeling was intoxicating. It beckoned him, whispered promises of strength, of victory, of dominance over his enemies. But as it rose, so did the fear. Naruto clenched his fists, trying to hold the fire back. He could feel his heart racing, his breath quickening. "Do not fight it." Ryuko's voice was quiet, but firm. "Let it rise, but do not let it control you. You must be its master, not its servant." Naruto swallowed, forcing himself to steady his breath. He had faced many battles in his life. But this was different. This was not an external enemy. This was a battle within himself. With Ryuko's guidance, Naruto slowly allowed the power to rise. He felt the fire course through his veins, felt the strength of Kozuki Oden's legacy infuse his being. It was overwhelming, but he refused to give in. Finally, after what seemed like hours, he opened his eyes. The warmth inside him had subsided, leaving behind a quiet calm, like the stillness after a storm. "Well done," Ryuko said, his approval evident in his voice. "But remember, Naruto, the fire is not for destruction. It is the fire that forges strength. But it must be tempered with wisdom. Never forget that." Naruto nodded, sweat dripping down his face. "I won't forget. I'll control it." Lesson 2. The Sword of Oden. The next phase of Naruto's training was focused on mastering the legendary swordsmanship that came with the power of Oden. Ryuko led him to a secluded temple deep within the forest, where an ancient katana lay on an altar. The blade was blackened with age, its edge sharp and ready for battle. "This is the sword of Kozuki Oden," Ryuko said, his tone reverent. "It is said that Oden's will is bound to this blade, and it is through this sword that he became a symbol of strength and justice." Naruto approached the sword, his hand hovering over its hilt. He had never wielded a blade like this before. His experience with weapons was limited to kunai and shuriken, tools of a shinobi. But this was something else entirely. This was a weapon that had once belonged to a man whose name had been etched into the annals of history. "Take it," Ryuko said. "But understand this. The sword is not just a weapon. It is a reflection of your soul. If you wield it with the wrong intent, it will turn against you." Naruto's fingers wrapped around the hilt of the katana. As soon as his hand touched it, a surge of power ran through his body. The sword felt like it was alive, resonating with his chakra. He could feel its weight, its history, its purpose. "Now," Ryuko continued, "I will teach you the basic stances. But remember, this is not about brute strength. It's about precision, grace, balance." For hours, Naruto practiced. His movements were slow at first, tentative, as he tried to familiarize himself with the unfamiliar weapon. The sword felt like an extension of his own body, its movements fluid and natural. But only when he was focused and in control. When he lost himself to the power, the sword would feel heavy, cumbersome. "You are not a beast, Naruto," Ryuko reminded him. "You are a warrior. And a true warrior understands that the strength of the sword comes not from the arm, but from the heart." Naruto focused. He could feel the power of Oden coursing through the blade, and for a moment, he could almost hear Oden's voice in the back of his mind. The legendary warrior's spirit seemed to whisper to him, guiding his movements. And with each strike, Naruto felt himself grow more attuned to the blade, more in sync with the power within him. Lesson 3. The cost of power. As the days turned into weeks, Naruto's training became more intense. Ryuko pushed him harder, testing his limits both physically and mentally. Each lesson was designed to bring him closer to mastering the power that lay within him, to understand the true meaning of restraint. But with each new level of mastery came a deeper understanding of the cost of power. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Naruto sat down by the campfire, exhausted. His muscles ached, and his mind was heavy with the weight of the lessons he had learned. Ryuko sat beside him, the firelight dancing across his weathered face. "You've come far, Naruto," Ryuko said, his voice soft. But you must understand this. The more you tap into this power, the more it will demand of you. Oden's life was one of glory and sacrifice. He gave everything for his ideals. And in the end, it cost him everything. Naruto looked up at the sage. His eyes serious. What do you mean? I've already given so much. I won't lose anyone else. Ryuko nodded slowly. I know you've already sacrificed much, Naruto. But power like this is not given freely. It takes a toll on the mind, the body, and the soul. Oden was a man of great heart. But even his strength couldn't save him from the consequences of his choices. Naruto clenched his fists. He had already lost so much, his parents, his friends, his teacher, Jiraiya. The idea that power could cost him more was terrifying. But he knew Ryuko was right. The true cost of power wasn't just physical. It was everything else. Everything Naruto had built. Everything he held dear. And if he didn't control this power, if he didn't understand it fully, it could destroy him. Ryuko's voice broke through his thoughts. Remember, Naruto. The true measure of a warrior is not in how much they can fight, but in how much they can protect. Protect your heart, and you will protect the ones you love. Control this power, and you will become a beacon of strength for the world. Naruto nodded, feeling the weight of Ryuko's words sink deep into his heart. This was no longer just about him. It was about everyone he cared about. And he would protect them, no matter the cost. Naruto's journey into mastering the power of Kozuki Oden had taken him into deeper and darker territories than he had anticipated. The lessons under Ryuko were not only about perfecting his swordsmanship or unlocking the full potential of Oden's legacy but were also about confronting the very core of what it meant to possess such overwhelming power. Ryuko had warned him that the more Naruto embraced Oden's strength, the more his spirit would be tested. In this secluded forest, where time seemed to move differently, Naruto trained tirelessly, slowly beginning to understand the nature of the power he had inherited. But with each passing day, the gravity of his situation pressed harder against his heart. The sword was now an extension of him. The warmth and fire he had once felt as an uncontrollable beast were now tempered. The black katana, which had seemed so foreign to him, now felt as if it was always meant to be in his hands. However, something had started to shift in the air. The test of heart one crisp morning. As the sun barely peeked over the horizon, Naruto stood in the clearing, holding the katana before him. His posture was relaxed, but there was a quiet tension beneath the surface. He could feel it, something that had been building inside him for days. An uneasy sensation creeping into his mind. Ryuko approached, his footsteps almost inaudible. You feel it, don't you? Naruto didn't need to respond. He knew exactly what Ryuko was talking about. The power inside him had grown heavier, more insistent. The pull to wield it, to unleash it, was becoming an ever-present urge. His body, now attuned to the sword and Oden's strength, hummed with the promise of unstoppable force. But there was a shadow in the depth of his thoughts. A growing fear that what was once a gift could become a curse. Ryuko studied him with a somber expression. This is the moment you must face, Naruto. You've tapped into the fire of Kozuki Oden. But now, you must ask yourself, what will you do with it? Naruto gripped the sword's hilt tighter. The weight of the question, simple as it was, felt like an insurmountable mountain. In the past, he had fought for survival, for his friends, and for a dream. But now, with the power of a legendary warrior coursing through him, what would he fight for? He took a deep breath. I fight to protect. To keep my promises. Ryuko nodded. But his gaze grew sharper. And what happens when that power, that promise, demands more than you are willing to give? Naruto's eyes narrowed. I don't know what you mean. The sage sighed, looking out toward the horizon where the first rays of light began to touch the earth. This power will never be satisfied with just protection. It is a force that seeks to change the world, sometimes through destruction, sometimes through revolution. It asks more of you with every step you take. If you are not careful, it will consume you. Naruto took a step back, feeling a cold sweat forming on his brow. Consume me? He repeated, his voice uncertain. I won't let that happen. I won't let anyone control me. Ryuko raised his hand. It's not about control, Naruto. It's about understanding. Kozuki Oden was a man who sought justice. But in the end, he lost his life because he could not temper his rage with wisdom. He acted not only as a warrior but as a symbol. And symbols are often swallowed by the worlds they seek to change. Naruto's fingers tightened around the katana's hilt. It felt heavier now. Not from the weight of the metal but from the burden of the responsibility it carried. You've already made strides toward controlling the power, Ryuko continued. But now you must prove that you can control your mind. That's where true strength lies, not in raw force, but in restraint. Naruto took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. I get it, Ryuko. It's not about being the strongest. It's about knowing when not to fight. Ryuko's eyes softened for a moment, a rare smile flickering across his lips. Exactly. And the path ahead will test that understanding. Not just for you, but for everyone around you. Power can change a man, Naruto. It can make him see things differently. But it can also tear him apart. The first test. A friend in need. Naruto's training continued. Though the weight of Ryuko's words lingered in the back of his mind. It was a warning he could not ignore. But he wasn't yet sure how to truly face it. He had become stronger. Yes. But the sense of isolation he felt was growing. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Ryuko looked at Naruto with an unspoken understanding in his gaze. There's someone you need to see, he said quietly. Naruto didn't hesitate. Who? You'll see. And so, Naruto followed Ryuko through the dense trees to a small clearing. To his surprise, standing there was a familiar face. One that filled him with a mixture of shock and relief. Sasuke? The Uchiha had appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, his eyes dull and emotionless as ever. Though there was a hint of surprise beneath the cold exterior. His face was slightly more gaunt, a sign that the days had been hard for him as well. What are you doing here? Naruto asked, his voice a little too sharp. Sasuke studied him for a long moment before responding, his tone flat. I came to see you. To make sure you're still. You. The words hit Naruto harder than he expected. The old rivalry between them seemed distant, replaced by something more profound, more serious. But beneath it all, Naruto could sense that Sasuke was troubled, just as troubled as he was. I'm fine, Naruto said, though the words felt empty. Ryuko stepped aside, leaving them alone. He hadn't spoken a word, but his presence was a reminder that Naruto was being tested, not just by the power of Oden, but by his own relationships. Sasuke was not here by accident. There was something deeper at play. Are you really? Sasuke asked, his eyes narrowing. You've changed, Naruto. I can feel it. Something about you. You become different. Naruto's hand instinctively tightened around the hilt of his sword. I've always been different. You're one to talk. Sasuke. But Sasuke didn't react as Naruto expected. Instead, there was a flicker of something like concern in his eyes. Something Naruto rarely saw from him. Tell me, Naruto. Do you still want to be Hokage? Sasuke's voice was low, yet filled with meaning. Naruto blinked, taken aback by the question. Of course. I want to be the strongest. So I can protect everyone. Sasuke shook his head. That's not enough anymore. Not with the power you have now. You're no longer just a boy chasing a dream. You're something more. Dangerous? Naruto's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? You've inherited the power of a legendary warrior, Sasuke said, his voice cold but steady. That power isn't something you can just wield on a whim. You're carrying Oden's will now, and that will change you. I've seen it happen. It's happening to you right now. Naruto's eyes darkened. So, what? You're here to tell me to give up? To walk away from my dream? No. Sasuke's voice was firm, but his gaze softened. I'm here to remind you that you're not alone anymore. You have to decide what kind of man you want to be. Naruto. Will you wield this power to protect? Or will it consume you? Naruto stood in silence, the weight of Sasuke's words pressing down on him. He had been running from his past, from his demons. But now those same demons were in front of him. Sasuke was right. The path he walked wasn't just his own anymore. The fire of Oden burned brightly within him. But it was not just his will to fight that would define him. It was his will to control that power. The words Sasuke had spoken echoed in Naruto's mind like a distant, ominous whisper. The path before him had grown more complicated, tangled by the immense power he now wielded. His hands, once the instruments of his dreams, now trembled with the weight of responsibility, a heavy burden that threatened to crush him under its pressure. Naruto's gaze lingered on Sasuke. But the Uchiha had already turned his back, his steps slow and deliberate as he walked away. "Think about it, Naruto," Sasuke called without looking back. "Power is nothing if you don't know how to use it." Naruto remained still, staring at the empty space where his friend had stood. The rustling of the leaves around him seemed louder than ever, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to make a choice. He clenched his fist around the hilt of the katana. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a part of him now. But was it the weapon that controlled him? Or was it the other way around? The choice of the heart. As Naruto stood alone in the clearing, the soft whispers of the wind seemed to carry with them an age-old wisdom, urging him to listen. Ryuko's words about restraint, about understanding the true nature of his power, floated back into his consciousness. Oden's legacy was not just a weapon. It was a test. He couldn't ignore the depth of what Sasuke had said. There had been a time when Naruto had chased after power with reckless abandon, seeking only to prove himself, to silence the doubts that clung to him. But now, he had achieved more than he had ever dreamed. But the stakes were higher than ever before. The power of Kozuki Oden was a force like no other. It had the potential to reshape the world, to alter the very fabric of reality itself. But power, unchecked and unrestrained, was a dangerous thing. It could consume the wielder, leaving nothing behind but ashes. Naruto exhaled slowly, taking in the weight of the katana in his hands, feeling its resonance with his own soul. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone he had ever promised to protect. He couldn't afford to lose himself to the power he now held. He remembered the countless times he had fought, not for himself, but for his friends, for his village. His dream of becoming Hokage had always been intertwined with his desire to protect. But Sasuke's words rang in his ears. "You're no longer just a boy chasing a dream. You're something more. Dangerous." Naruto dropped his gaze to the ground, his mind churning with the gravity of the situation. He had to make a choice, not just for himself, but for the future. He couldn't let the power consume him. He had to control it. The path forward the following days were filled with intense training. Though this time, it was different. Ryuko, ever the silent observer, had stepped back, allowing Naruto to find his own way. The old sage had seen the doubt and hesitation in Naruto's eyes and knew that the boy needed to forge his own path, to come to terms with the consequences of his power. Naruto spent hours in meditation, seeking to center himself, to reconnect with the core of who he was. The image of his parents, of Iruka, Kakashi, and all the others who had helped shape him, filled his mind. They had all given him pieces of themselves, trusted him with their hopes and dreams. He couldn't let them down. He wouldn't. But with each meditation session, with each passing day, Naruto felt the katana calling to him. The power of Kozuki Oden was a fire that refused to be extinguished. It simmered beneath the surface, threatening to burst forth with every thought, every breath. It was tempting, seductive in its promise of endless power. But Naruto knew the truth now. It wasn't enough to be powerful. It wasn't even enough to be the strongest. What mattered was control over the strength he had, control over the darkness that threatened to swallow him whole. One night, as the moonlight bathed the forest in silver light, Naruto stood at the edge of a cliff, the vast expanse of the world stretching out before him. He raised the katana, feeling the wind against his skin, the weight of the blade heavy in his hand. He was ready. He had to be. The test of restraint. The next day, Ryuko approached Naruto, his presence as calm and unyielding as ever. "You're ready for the next step," he said, his voice a quiet murmur. Naruto nodded, feeling the resolve in his chest firming up. "I'm ready," he replied, his voice steady but firm. Ryuko led him into a deeper part of the forest, where the trees grew dense, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that shielded them from the sky above. The ground was soft beneath their feet, the air thick with the scent of earth and leaves. "This is where the real test begins," Ryuko said, his eyes narrowing with intent. You've learned to wield the power of Oden. But now, you must learn to control it. Naruto's eyes flashed with determination. What do I have to do? Ryuko stepped back, gesturing to the space before them. You must fight. But this time, it's different. This is not a battle to win. It is a battle to restrain. Naruto blinked, confused. What do you mean? This isn't about defeating an enemy. Naruto. It's about resisting the urge to unleash the full extent of your power. You have the strength to destroy everything around you, to reshape the world in an instant. But do you have the strength to hold back? Naruto's heart skipped a beat. The test was not to push his limits, but to hold back, to resist the urge to strike with everything he had. He looked at Ryuko, who simply nodded in affirmation. The true strength of a warrior is not in his ability to fight, but in his ability to hold back when necessary. Restraint, Naruto, is the key to mastering the power of Oden. Naruto took a deep breath, his hand gripping the katana's hilt once more. He could feel the heat building inside him, the fire of Oden raging just beneath the surface, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. He had always fought with everything he had, but now, he understood that there was more to being a true warrior than simply unleashing his power. He closed his eyes, centering himself, focusing on the stillness within. The power of Oden surged within him, but this time, he let it pass. He didn't need to unleash it. He didn't need to destroy everything in his path. The test had begun. The silence in the forest seemed endless as Naruto stood, katana gripped tightly in his hand. His chest rose and fell with each steady breath, his mind a maelstrom of thoughts and emotions. The fire within him, the burning heat of Oden's power, was eager to be unleashed. But Naruto fought to maintain his composure. This test, Ryuko's challenge, was not about victory through strength, but victory through control. He glanced at Ryuko, whose calm gaze remained unwavering. There was no doubt that the sage knew the true weight of the task at hand. But even so, there was a slight flicker of something in his eyes, something Naruto couldn't quite place. It was the kind of look a mentor gives to a student on the brink of an important breakthrough, or a potential downfall. Naruto's hand flexed around the katana's hilt, the warmth of its metal seeping into his skin. The sword, a weapon forged from the past, called out to him. Its presence was undeniable, and in its steel, he felt the raw pulse of Oden's spirit. But this was the test. Restrain it. Control it. The first spark. Naruto closed his eyes and focused. The forest around him seemed to disappear, and all that existed was the beating of his own heart and the hum of power within his veins. He could feel the surge of energy as it sought to break free, to explode outward in a violent blaze. But he couldn't let it. The katana pulsed with a life of its own, as if urging him to swing it, to cut through the air and cleave the world in half. It was exhilarating, but Naruto resisted. He took a deep breath, forcing the fire down. His body trembled with the effort, his muscles aching under the strain. It was like holding a raging storm in the palm of his hand, knowing that a single misstep could destroy everything. Ryuko watched quietly, waiting. His face showed no hint of impatience or judgment, only the calm certainty of someone who had walked this path before. Focus, Naruto. Ryuko's voice cut through the tension. You're not here to fight. You're here to resist. Naruto's grip tightened on the hilt of the sword, his knuckles turning white. He could feel it, the pull, the overwhelming need to strike, to release the full force of his power. It was all too easy. One swing, one slash, and the world would fall to his will. But this wasn't about strength. This was about wisdom. Naruto's mind began to clear as he shut out the urge to fight. He focused instead on the present moment, on his breathing, on the earth beneath his feet, on the wind rustling through the leaves. Slowly, the flames of power began to subside, settling into a quiet simmer within him. Good, Ryuko said, his voice low and approving. You're starting to understand. But it's not over yet. Naruto opened his eyes to find Ryuko standing in front of him, his expression unreadable. What's next? Naruto asked, his voice strained but determined. You've held back once. Now you must do it again, Ryuko replied. But this time, with even more force. This power is a part of you now. And you must learn to control it in every aspect. You will face your own instincts, the darker side of your nature. And you will resist them. Naruto's heart skipped a beat. Face his own instincts? That sounded like a deeper, more personal challenge than anything he had ever encountered before. Before he could respond, Ryuko stepped aside, raising a hand to the sky. The test is not complete. You must face the storm within yourself. The storm within. Suddenly, the world around Naruto began to shift. The wind picked up, swirling violently through the forest, shaking the branches of the trees. Dark clouds gathered overhead, blocking out the sun and casting the clearing into shadow. The air grew heavy, charged with an unnatural energy. Naruto's senses heightened. The storm in the sky was nothing compared to the storm inside him. The power of Oden stirred within, like a beast awakening from a long slumber. It clawed at his insides, urging him to act, to unleash the fury that was building in his chest. This was it, the moment Ryuko had warned him about. Naruto took a deep breath, closing his eyes. The energy inside him surged again, this time with far greater intensity. He could feel the sword burning in his hand, demanding to be used. His heart pounded in his chest as his body threatened to give in to the call of destruction. Remember, Naruto, Ryuko's voice broke through the noise of the storm. Strength lies not in what you can destroy, but in what you choose to protect. Naruto's eyes snapped open. Ryuko's words struck deep into his soul. He wasn't just holding back a power that could devastate the world. He was holding on to everything he cared about. His friends, his village, his dream. It wasn't about control over the sword alone. It was about control over himself. With a force of will, Naruto closed his eyes again and pushed the power down. It fought him every step of the way. But he resisted. He focused on the feeling of the wind, the earth beneath his feet, the fire of determination that burned in his chest. Not to unleash destruction, but to keep the power contained. I won't lose myself, he thought fiercely. Not again. The storm began to subside, the winds dying down and the clouds parting as if acknowledging his resolve. The katana's pulse slowed in his grip, the fire within him dimming to a manageable glow. Naruto's breath came in ragged gasps as the weight of the challenge lifted. He had done it. For now, he had conquered the storm inside him. Ryuko stepped forward, his face showing no emotion. But Naruto could sense the approval in the air. You passed the test, Naruto. Naruto let out a long breath, the tension in his muscles finally easing. I did. Ryuko nodded. You've learned the first lesson of true strength. That power is not something to be feared, but something to be understood. The hardest part is not in learning how to wield it, but in learning when not to. Naruto looked down at the katana in his hands. It felt different now, lighter, more like an ally than a weapon. It was part of him, but it no longer ruled him. He met Ryuko's gaze and smiled, the weight of the last few days lifting from his shoulders. I understand now. It's not just about being the strongest. It's about knowing when to fight, and when to hold back. Ryuko's expression softened for the first time in what felt like ages. Exactly. And now, you are one step closer to mastering your strength. The road ahead. Naruto stood in the clearing, the forest now calm and still around him. The storm had passed, both outside and within. But he knew this was only the beginning. He had learned the first lesson, but there was still so much more to understand. Power, as Ryuko had said, was not something that could be simply mastered in a single moment. It was a journey, one that required constant vigilance, constant growth. But Naruto was ready. He had taken the first step, and no matter what came next, he would continue moving forward. He would not let the power consume him. He would be the one to shape his destiny, to protect those he loved. And with that resolve in his heart, Naruto was more determined than ever to become the man he had always dreamed of. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt at peace with the path he had chosen. The following days were quieter. Naruto had returned to his training with a newfound sense of focus, as though a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. But the tranquility was only temporary. The events of the past week, the test of restraint, and the deeper understanding of his power had changed him in ways he couldn't yet fully comprehend. Ryuko had been a constant presence during those days, but his teachings had shifted. He was no longer merely guiding Naruto to control the immense power within him. He was now teaching him the subtler arts of wisdom, the importance of choosing one's battles and understanding the balance between peace and destruction. Your power is not infinite, Naruto, Ryuko would say, his tone steady and matter-of-fact. You cannot fight the world and expect to win every time. Every battle has consequences. And even the smallest ripple can cause a storm in the future. Naruto didn't fully grasp the meaning of those words yet, but something in his gut told him that they were more important than anything he had learned before. The weight of responsibility was beginning to settle into his chest. But it was a different kind of burden than before. It was not just about protecting the village or fulfilling his dream of becoming Hokage. It was about understanding the cost of his choices and the lasting impact they would have on everyone around him. An unexpected challenge one morning. As Naruto was practicing with the katana under Ryuko's watchful eye, a familiar presence entered the clearing. Naruto paused mid-swing, sensing the chakra's signature before even turning around. Sasuke. His old friend stood just beyond the trees, watching Naruto with a solemn expression. His presence was as heavy as ever, the weight of their complicated bond hanging between them. Are you still trying to control it? Sasuke's voice broke the silence, carrying an undertone of challenge. Or have you already learned to let it go completely? Naruto turned, his eyes narrowing in recognition. What do you mean by that? He asked, stepping forward, still gripping the katana. I'm trying to understand it. It's not something you just let go of. Sasuke's eyes flickered to the blade in Naruto's hand. The legacy of Kozuki Oden. Before meeting Naruto's gaze. Then you haven't learned enough. You're playing with fire, Naruto. You think you can master this power without consequence? Naruto's heart rate increased. There was something in Sasuke's voice that hinted at a deeper meaning. Something unsaid. I'm doing what I need to do. I can't let this power control me. Not again. Sasuke's lips curled into a faint smirk. Control. You can't control it, Naruto. Not completely. Not without consequences. The world doesn't work that way. Then what should I do? Naruto asked, a slight frustration creeping into his tone. Just give up? Let it take over? Sasuke's expression darkened. Nope. You need to understand the true nature of your power, Naruto. You need to embrace it. Accept it. Only then will you be able to wield it without fear of losing yourself. Naruto's fists clenched, the katana still in his grip. I'm not afraid of it, he muttered. But I won't let it destroy me. And I won't let it destroy the people I care about. Sasuke stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Naruto's. And what if your fear of destroying them is what causes you to lose them? You can't hold back forever, Naruto. You need to learn when to act, when to strike. Fear and hesitation are just as dangerous as uncontrolled power. The words hit Naruto like a slap to the face. Sasuke's gaze was piercing, cold yet filled with the weight of experience. It wasn't a challenge for power. It was a challenge to his very beliefs. Naruto exhaled slowly, his gaze drifting to the ground as he processed Sasuke's words. Was he afraid? Had the fear of losing control clouded his judgment? He looked up at Sasuke, his voice quiet but resolute. I won't lose myself. Not to this power. Not to anything. Sasuke seemed to study him for a long moment, his lips pursing. Then, he gave a small nod, his eyes softening ever so slightly. I hope you're right, Naruto. The test of self days passed, but Sasuke's words lingered in Naruto's mind. The question of control, of whether Naruto could truly master the power of Kozuki Oden without falling victim to it, gnawed at him. Despite his newfound restraint, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper needed to be addressed. One evening, after a particularly intense training session, Ryuko approached him. His presence was subtle, but Naruto could always sense when the sage was near. You're struggling with something, Ryuko observed, his eyes sharp. I can feel it in the air. Naruto sighed, lowering the katana in his hand. Sasuke. He says that the fear of control is just as dangerous as uncontrolled power. He thinks I'm holding back too much. Ryuko regarded him thoughtfully. Sasuke is not wrong in some ways. Fear and hesitation can cripple a warrior. But there is a balance to be found. Naruto looked up at Ryuko, confused. A balance? How am I supposed to find that balance? I thought I had it under control. But now I don't know what to think. Ryuko smiled faintly. You learned the importance of restraint, Naruto. But you must also learn when to act. When to unleash the power you hold within. Naruto furrowed his brow, stepping forward. So, it's not about holding back completely? There's a time to use it? Precisely. Ryuko answered. A sword is only useful when it is drawn. But it cannot be drawn at every moment. To truly master your power, you must learn not only when to fight, but also when to stand down. Naruto's grip tightened around the katana as the weight of Ryuko's words sank in. When to stand down. He had always been someone who charged into battle without hesitation, driven by a sense of justice and the need to protect others. But now, with the power of Kozuki Oden coursing through him, he could see how easily that impulse could lead to destruction. The cost of his actions would no longer be the same. The world had changed. And he had to change with it. I think I understand, Naruto said slowly, his eyes determined. It's not just about having the strength to fight. It's about having the wisdom to know when to hold back and when to strike. Ryuko nodded. Exactly. Power, without wisdom, is nothing more than chaos. But with wisdom, even the greatest power can be used to create peace. Naruto looked down at the katana in his hands, the weight of it now more symbolic than ever. It was not just a weapon, it was a responsibility. The power of Kozuki Oden was a gift, but also a burden, and it was up to him to learn how to wield it with both strength and wisdom. The path of the warrior as the days wore on, Naruto's understanding of his power deepened. He trained harder, not only in combat but also in discipline. He began to see the true nature of his strength, not as something to be feared or wielded recklessly, but as a tool to protect and build a better future. Sasuke's words still lingered in his mind, but Naruto now saw them not as a challenge, but as a reminder. The journey was not just about control, it was about the choices he would make along the way. And with each choice, he would be shaping the world around him. The path ahead was unclear, but Naruto was no longer afraid of the future. He had power, yes, but more importantly, he had the wisdom to know how to use it. And as long as he held on to that wisdom, he knew he would never lose himself.